Chapter 3186. Astral Soul Fusion. Lonely Sky Astral Soul, Purple Myrtle Descends. Upon hearing these words, Nietion's eyes flickered slightly, and his heart shuddered. Although he had never seen the Purple Myrtle Descends astral soul before, he felt an indescribable excitement. At this moment, he could see how terrifying the Purple Myrtle Descends astral soul was from the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor. After a while, the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor calmed down and said, "Let's not talk too much. Let's start helping them fuse their astral souls." Okay. Nietion nodded, looking forward to what the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor would do next. Nietion, only the Starry Sky Holy Lord can help a astral lord fuse a forbidden astral soul. However, you are too weak now, so I will temporarily lend my strength to you, the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor said as he looked at Nietion. Lend it to me? Nietion was stunned and frowned. He did not understand what the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor meant. Relax and release Starry Sky Eyes. Leave the rest to me, the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor said in a deep voice. Nietion nodded. Yeah. With a thought, he released the Starry Sky Eye. Previously, the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor had mentioned Starry Sky Eyes to Nietion. Now that he asked Nietion to release Starry Sky Eyes, it proved that he was the second astral envoy. After the Starry Sky Eyes appeared, it merged with Nietion's eyes. However, after Nietion's battle prowess increased and he awakened the demonic eye and heavenly punishment, he no longer used Starry Sky Eyes. He did not know why the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor wanted him to release Starry Sky Eyes. After a while, Starry Sky Eyes appeared and floated in the air. It was dazzling and dazzling. When the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor saw Starry Sky Eyes, his eyes trembled with excitement and passion. It had been millions of years. How could he not be excited to see Starry Sky Eyes again? After a while, the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor calmed down and slowly released his strength into Starry Sky Eyes. When Nietion saw this scene, he could not help but frown. He did not expect the Rakshasa temple to be able to integrate its power into the Starry Sky Eye. He could sense that the aura of the Starry Sky Eye was becoming stronger and stronger. The enormous power seemed to be about to burst the Starry Sky Eye. Very quickly, beads of sweat appeared on the forehead of the Rakshasa Hall's supervisor, and his face became much paler. That's enough. After a long time, the Rakshasa Temple Lord stopped releasing his power and let out a long breath. He nodded slightly and said, Nietion, withdraw your Starry Sky Eyes now. Nietion's eyes flickered. He immediately understood that the Rakshasa Hall Master was lending him power through the Starry Sky Eyes. Taking a deep breath, Nietion began to absorb the Starry Sky Eyes. Boom! The moment the eye of the Starry Sky returned, Nietion's entire body surged with a terrifying aura. It was extremely huge, and the surrounding space trembled. At this moment, Nietion felt that every inch of his flesh and blood contained an extremely terrifying power. His entire body felt like it was about to explode. He did not expect that the Starry Sky Eyes would actually contain such a terrifying power. Although his current aura could not be compared to when he released the Black Tortoise Astral Soul, it was not far from it. Nietion, start to activate your forbidden astral soul from the original opus of astral souls and integrate it into their bodies. The Rakshasa Temple Lord's face was pale as he looked at Nietion and said in a deep voice, "Okay." Nietion replied. With a thought, he began to activate the Azure Dragon Astral Soul and the Army Destroyer Astral Soul, pulling them out from the original opus of astral souls. However, he soon discovered that this was not an easy task. In just a few moments, his face was covered with beads of sweat. Nietion, the original opus of astral souls, is a kind of imprisonment for the forbidden astral soul. If you want to release the forbidden astral soul, you have to break this imprisonment. Carefully feel the aura of the original opus of astral souls, feel every strand of energy within it. The Rakshasa Temple Lord frowned. His deep voice was like a warning to the world. Okay. Nyetian nodded his head and relaxed his entire body. He began to carefully feel the aura of the original opus of astral souls. He was too anxious just now and had wasted some time. The Rakshasa Temple Lord looked at Nyetian, his eyes trembling slightly. It was obvious that he was extremely nervous. It's loosened. After a long time, Nyetian's eyes trembled as he exclaimed in excitement. As the sound of his voice faded, rays of starlight gushed out from the original opus of astral souls, condensing into 2 starlight vortexes in the air. How powerful! The eyes of the Rakshasa Temple Lord trembled involuntarily when he saw this scene. He didn't expect that Nyetian's comprehension would be so strong, to be able to release a forbidden astral soul so quickly. Once a forbidden astral soul entered the original opus of astral souls, it was equivalent to being sealed within. Only after experiencing extreme stimulation could the forbidden astral soul be released. With Nyetian's current strength, being able to release his astral soul in such a short period of time was beyond the expectations of the Rakshasa Temple Lord. Nyetian, quickly merge your astral souls into their bodies. The eyes of the Rakshasa Temple Lord trembled as he shouted excitedly. Okay. Nyetian replied, his eyes filled with excitement. With a thought, the Azure Dragon Astral Soul and the Army Destroyer Astral Soul flew towards the Desolate Ghost and Tang 13 respectively. Following which, under Nyetian's control, the Azure Dragon Astral Soul and the Army Destroyer Astral Soul slowly merged into the bodies of the Desolate Ghost and Tang 13. This future Astral Saint Lord is too terrifying. The eyes of the Rakshasa Temple Lord trembled involuntarily as he witnessed this scene, his heart filled with shock. Nyetian's performance had exceeded his expectations. The fusion of astral souls was actually not a difficult task, but it required a large amount of energy. Originally, with Nyetian's strength, it was impossible for him to fuse astral souls. At this moment, he was borrowing the strength of the Rakshasa Temple Lord to barely begin the fusion of the forbidden astral souls. Although Nyetian's strength was not strong, his control over his strength had reached an unimaginable level. One must know that at this moment, he was not using his own strength, but the strength of the Rakshasa Temple Lord. However, his control over his strength was as though he was using his own strength, causing the Rakshasa Temple Lord to sigh in admiration. Following which, everything proceeded smoothly. The Azure Dragon Astral Soul and the Army Destroyer Astral Soul slowly merged with the Desolate Ghost and Tang 13. Nyetian, the martial physiques of Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost are too weak. There are too many things to take note of when fusing astral souls. You have to take it slow. The Rakshasa Temple Lord was worried that Nyetian would be anxious, hence he advised. The corners of Nyetian's mouth twitched as he nodded his head. At the same time, Tang 13 and the Desolate Ghost accepted the power of the forbidden astral souls. Their martial physiques slowly recovered, and their damaged yuan meridians and meridians slowly healed. This was especially so for Tang 13. Her aura quickly stabilized and became increasingly stronger. One of the twin absolutes, the Killing Wolf Astral Monarch, is actually the future demonic Saint Blood Sovereign. This will be a great help to the reconstruction of the Astral Saint world in the future. The Rakshasa Temple Lord stared at Tang 13 as his lips curled up uncontrollably. There was no absolute dependence between the astral origin stones and the forbidden astral souls. However, there was an inseparable connection between the Astral Saint Lord and the Astral Monarch. Chapter 3187. Astral Soul Imprint. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. In the cultivation space, Nyetian let out a long breath. His face was as pale as paper, looking extremely unsightly. After 3 days, he finally succeeded in merging the Azure Dragon Astral Soul and the Army Destroyer Astral Soul with Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost. At this moment, the desolate ghost and Tang 13 were lying quietly. Their auras were stable, and the injuries of their martial physiques had completely healed. Even the desolate ghost's damaged martial Tao foundation had been completely restored by the forbidden astral soul. After the forbidden astral soul merged with the cultivator, it would become one with the cultivator. As the Rakshasa Hall elder said, as long as the astral soul was not destroyed, the astral venerate would not die. Nia Tian, they have completely merged the forbidden astral soul and become astral venerates. The Rakshasa Hall elder looked at Nia Tian, his eyes burning with excitement. He was even more excited than Nia Tian. Lord Temple Elder, when will they wake up? Nia Tian took a deep breath. After consuming a few divine pills, his complexion improved slightly. However, his body was still very fatigued. He asked in a heavy voice. It'll take about a month. The Rakshasa Hall elder nodded. He then looked at Nia Tian and said, Nia Tian, merging the astral souls exhausted too much energy. You are now both mentally and physically exhausted, and your martial physique has suffered a great blow. Rest well for the next month. Do not leave the 10 Directions Rakshasa Hall for now. All right. Nia Tian nodded slightly. He could feel that his martial physique was very fatigued and needed a good rest. However, he immediately discovered that the Rakshasa Hall elder's aura had weakened significantly. It was very strange. Nia Tian, when I merged my energy into the starry sky eyes, I damaged my martial Tao foundation. Right now, I only have the strength of a rank 1 false sage. The Rakshasa Hall elder saw Nia Tian's doubts and shook his head with a bitter smile. Nia Tian was stunned. He did not expect the earlier incident to affect the Rakshasa Hall elder so much. Don't worry. When you return the starry sky eyes to me, my strength will naturally recover, and I will definitely be stronger than before. The Rakshasa Temple Lord laughed and said, I will be staying in the Rakshasa Temple for a period of time. There will be no danger. Nia Tian nodded and didn't say anything else. Next, Nia Tian rested in the cultivation space. Soon, a month had passed. Inside the cultivation space, Tang 13 and the boundless desolate ghost woke up at the same time. Ghost Desolation 13, how do you feel? Nia Tian took a step forward and asked with blazing eyes. At this moment, his martial body had completely recovered, and his strength had increased as well. He seemed to be showing signs of breaking through to rank 4 pseudo-sage. Nia Tian, Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost stared at Nia Tian at the same time. Their eyes were shaking as if they couldn't believe that they were still alive. After a while, the two of them calmed down and began to inspect their bodies. Tang 13's eyes trembled as he stood rooted to the ground. Not only did his martial body recover completely, his strength had also increased to the 7th rank pseudo-holiness. Desolate Ghost was also astonished. His eyes trembled with disbelief. At this moment, Desolate Ghost was already a rank 9 pseudo-sage expert. His strength had also increased by 2 rank. After the two of them merged their astral souls, it wasn't strange for them to have a breakthrough in their strength. Teacher, why do I feel that there's an aura in my body? It seems to be connected to Nia Tian. At this moment, Desolate Ghost seemed to have discovered something. He stared at the Luosha Hall's supervisor in shock. His eyes trembled and he couldn't speak. He felt that there was an aura in his body that was connected to Nia Tian. This feeling of connection was similar to the resonance of bloodlines. However, it was even deeper than that. It was a resonance that reached deep into the soul. It's an astral soul imprint. The Luosha Hall's supervisor smiled and said, Nia Tian helped you merge your Azure Dragon astral soul. At the same time, he also left an astral soul imprint in your body. Astral soul imprint? Desolate Ghost was stunned. He didn't understand. Nia Tian was also stunned. He couldn't help but look at the Luosha Hall's supervisor. The essence of an astral soul imprint is a kind of soul resonance. With this kind of resonance, even if the two of you are separated by thousands of miles, you will still be able to sense each other's existence. The Luosha Hall's supervisor nodded and explained. This. Nye Tian and Desolate Ghost's expressions froze. They were momentarily speechless. Nye Tian didn't expect that there would be such a connection between the Astral Lord and the Astral Lord. Strange. Why can't I feel the aura of an astral soul imprint in my body? At this moment, Tang 13 suddenly stepped forward and asked with a puzzled look on her face. She specially probed and didn't feel any resonance from Nye Tian's body. You merged with the Army Destroyer Astral Soul. It isn't a complete forbidden astral soul. Hence, the aura of the astral soul imprint is very weak. The Luosha Hall's supervisor smiled and said, when you merge with the complete Slaughterwolf astral soul, the aura of the astral soul imprint will be even stronger than Desolate Ghost's. Tang 13's face darkened. She was speechless. You guys are still very weak. You basically have no control over the astral soul imprint. When you guys are strong enough, you can actually control the aura of the astral soul imprint. The Luosha Hall's supervisor could tell what Tang 13 was thinking. Oh. Tang 13 nodded and smiled. She didn't say anything else. Actually, there are many mysterious connections between the Astral Lord and the Astral Lord. I don't know either. When you guys are stronger, you will understand this connection better. The Luosha Hall's supervisor glanced at Nye Tian and the rest and smiled. Nye Tian nodded and didn't say anything else. Following that, Nye Tian and the rest walked out of the cultivation space. The people guarding outside were very excited when they saw Nye Tian and the rest. Tang 13. Tang Yuyu was the most emotional. After she shouted, she directly jumped into Tang 13's arms. Her face was full of tears. Desolate Ghost. The Luosha Hall's supervisor saw that Desolate Ghost had recovered. He took a step forward. His body hidden under the black robe was trembling slightly. After a long time, the crowd finally calmed down. Little friend Nye Tian, on behalf of the Luosha tribe, I thank you. The Luosha Hall's supervisor suddenly walked to Nye Tian's side, bowed deeply, and said solemnly. Yulua and the rest had already told the Luosha Hall's supervisor everything that had happened in the Holy Demon Mystic Realm. That was why the supervisor had done this. Lord Supervisor, you are too courteous. Nye Tian quickly helped the Luosha Hall's supervisor up and smiled faintly. Following that, the crowd left and soon arrived at the Luosha Hall of the 10 Directions. Little friend Nye Tian, the Luosha tribe will never forget your great kindness to the Luosha tribe. In the future, if you have any need for the Luosha Hall of the 10 Directions, the Luosha Hall of the 10 Directions will do anything for you. The Luosha Hall's supervisor sat on the main seat and thanked Nye Tian once again. Lord Supervisor, you are too kind. Nye Tian smiled faintly. Then, he thought of something and immediately extended his palm. A scarlet stone appeared in his palm. Azura blood stone. The Luosha Hall's supervisor could not help but exclaim when he saw the scarlet stone. He immediately stood up. Chapter 3188. Returned to the Holy Soul. The Rakshasa Temple leader had asked Nye Tian to enter the Holy Demon's secret realm for the Azura Bloodstone. However, too many things had happened previously, so the Rakshasa Temple leader had almost forgotten about it. The Azura Bloodstone could open the Holy Demon Book, which recorded the method to suppress the non-heavenly blood curse, which was the method to save the Rakshasa Temple leader's life. How could the Rakshasa Temple leader not be excited? Nye Tian smiled faintly and threw the Azura blood stone to the Rakshasa Temple leader. He said, Temple leader, I have already integrated a large amount of star energy into the Azura bloodstone. It should be able to open the Holy Demon Book. The Rakshasa Temple leader caught the Holy Demon bloodstone and felt the star energy within it. His eyes shone with excitement under his black robe. After a long while, the sect master of the demon Desolate sect finally calmed down. Then, he bowed towards Nyetian again and said, "I, 10 Directions Ghost Desolate, thank Mr. Nyetian on behalf of the Rakshasas." Opening the holy demon book not only saved the Rakshasa temple leader's life, but more importantly, it saved everyone in the Rakshasa tribe. The Rakshasa temple leader's blood had the non-heavenly blood curse. Even the ghost land had it. The Rakshasa temple leader's bow was from the bottom of his heart. Nyetian hurriedly stepped forward and helped the Rakshasa temple leader up. Then everyone chatted for a while. Nyetian stood up and said, "Temple leader, I have been in the 10 Directions sacred realm for a long time. I have to leave now." "Mr. Nyetian, are you leaving just like that?" The Rakshasa temple leader was surprised. He did not expect Nyetian to leave so soon. "I have other things to do, so it's not convenient for me to stay here any longer," Nyetian nodded and said calmly. He had almost settled the matters in the 10 Directions Rakshasa temple, so there was no need for him to stay any longer. Most importantly, he was worried about his father and the Nye family, so he was eager to return. "In that case, I won't hold you back," the Rakshasa temple leader stood up and said regretfully. He had wanted to entertain Nyetian with great hospitality, but now it seemed that there was no chance. "Father, this child wishes to leave with Nyetian. Father, please agree." At this time, Desolate Ghost Wujiang suddenly stood up and said loudly. The Rakshasa palace master's figure turned sluggish, then he smiled and said, "Wujiang, father agrees to your request. However, you must remember that Mr. Nyetian is a great benefactor of our Rakshasa race. You must follow him and protect him well." "I understand." Desolate Ghost Wasteland nodded heavily and bowed. Nyetian frowned and could not help but laugh bitterly. To be honest, he did not want the boundless ghost Desolate to follow him. At this moment, he glanced at the Rakshasa temple supervisor, who nodded with a smile. He immediately understood that the boundless ghost Desolate wanted to leave with him. It was the Rakshasa Hall's order. It was obvious that the Rakshasa Hall supervisor wanted to find a guard for Nyetian. Desolate Ghost Wujiang was already a 9th stage pseudo-saint. Even compared to a peak expert like Kuyo Onaguchi, he was not too far off. He would indeed be a good guard. The Rakshasa Hall supervisor made such a gracious arrangement that Nyetian could not refuse, so he could only obey. Then, the group walked out of the hall. Tang 13 and Tang Yuyu came to Nyetian's side with smiles on their faces. "Tang 13, Tang Yuyu, are we going our separate ways again?" Nyetian knew that the two were bidding farewell, so he could not help but laugh bitterly. "Nyetian, we are going to the Juying domain. Aren't you very interested in the Juying shrine? Let me go there first. I can help you scout ahead," Tang 13 said with a slight nod. "All right." The corner of Nyetian's mouth twitched, and he smiled cheerfully. While they were chatting, Tang 13 had asked the Rakshasa Hall supervisor about the Juying shrine. At that time, Nyetian had guessed that this fellow was most likely going to the Juying domain. Tang 13 already knew that the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf of the Juying Shrine had a Greedy Wolf star soul, so he could not wait any longer. With Tang 13's current strength, there was no need for Nyetian to worry about him. The 5th stage pseudo-saint Tang 13 could defeat an expert like An Wufeng in an instant. Now that Tang 13 was a 7th stage pseudo-saint, one could imagine how strong he was. In fact, Nyetian felt that even he might not be a match for Tang 13. However, he was confident that he would catch up soon. Next, the group arrived outside a spacetime array. Tang 13 and Tang Yuyu left first. After they entered the array, their figures disappeared in the blink of an eye. As Nyetian watched the two disappear, the corner of his mouth twitched. He could not help but feel a little disappointed. Next, Nyetian and Desolate Ghost prepared to enter the array. Nyetian. At that moment, Yulua suddenly took a step forward. She looked at Nyetian, her eyes burning with tears. She seemed to have something to say, but in the end, she only said 2 words. Take care. Take care. Nye Tian nodded with a smile, then entered the array with Desolate Ghost. Yulo watched as Nye Tian's figure disappeared. Tears welled up in her eyes. She did have something to say to Nye Tian, but she did not have the courage to say it. In her opinion, Nye Tian was too outstanding. Nye Tian, if fate wills it, we will meet again, Yulua said silently in her heart. The Rakshasa Hall supervisor and the Rakshasa Hall supervisor shook their heads at the same time. At the same time, 2 figures appeared in the sky above the sacred spirit region. It was Nye Tian and Desolate Ghost. The 2 had arrived at the sacred spirit region from the Decimo territory through the space-time formation. I'm finally back. Nye Tian took a deep breath after returning to the sacred spirit region. He was overjoyed. Nye Tian, where are we going now? Desolate Ghost stood beside Nye Tian. It was his first time coming to the legendary sacred spirit region, and he could not help but feel excited. Desolate Ghost, you're too strong. You should hide your aura. Nye Tian did not say it directly, but smiled. Desolate Ghost was not even 1,000 years old, but his strength had already reached the 9th order pseudo-sacred realm. Desolate Ghost nodded and withdrew his aura. Nye Tian examined the boundless Ghost Desolation's aura and smiled, looking very satisfied. This is good enough. Desolate Ghost hid his aura with the Hand of Destruction. As long as he did not release his aura or use the Hand of Destruction, not many people would be able to sense his true strength. Let's contact Old Hua. At this moment, Nye Tian smiled and a jade talisman appeared in his hand. It was the jade talisman that Hua Iru had given him before they parted. With a thought, Nye Tian inserted a stream of his divine sense into the jade talisman and asked for Hua Iru's whereabouts. Chapter 3189. It's been so long. Nye Tian frowned as he sensed the image transmitted from the jade talisman. His expression turned ugly. Didn't Hua Iru bring Wei Kong and Shi Lulan back to the shore of the Sea of Bitterness when they parted ways? Why would he suddenly appear in Saint Soul Academy? Moreover, Hua Iru's expression was very nervous, which was very different from his usual calm demeanor. If not for Hua Iru's aura in the jade talisman, Nye Tian would have suspected that the person in the image wasn't Hua Iru. Did something happen? Nye Tian's heart sank as a bad premonition rose in his heart. Nye Tian, are you alright? Desolate Ghost frowned as he saw Nye Tian's strange expression and asked in a low voice. I'm fine. Nye Tian waved his hand and said, Let's go to Saint Soul Academy now. With that, a pair of star soul wings appeared on Nye Tian's back and he soared into the sky like a rainbow. Desolate Ghost frowned as he didn't know what was going on. He could only follow after Huang Xiaolong. Half a day later, Nye Tian and Desolate Ghost silhouettes appeared in the sky above Saint Soul Academy. Is this Saint Soul Academy? Desolate Ghost's eyes narrowed as he looked at the Saint Soul Academy below him. Come with me. Nye Tian nodded and his silhouette directly landed on the Saint Soul Square. The sudden arrival of Nye Tian and Desolate Ghost caused the surrounding crowd to be stunned. Immediately afterwards, someone recognized Nye Tian, and his expression flickered. Nye Tian. Nye Tian is back. The trader's son, Nye Tian, he actually dared to come back. I heard that in the Arctic Ice Mountain, he single-handedly swallowed the Holy World Seed, offending all the major forces in the Saint Soul region. Now he actually dares to come back to the academy. Isn't he courting death? No, his aura is so strong I can't sense his strength. The crowd looked at Nye Tian and discussed in shock. Desolate Ghost frowned. He didn't expect Nye Tian to be so famous in Saint Spirit Academy. However, Nye Tian didn't pay any attention to the others, and directly walked towards the Holy Soul Palace. He was worried about Hua Iru, so he walked very quickly. But at this moment, he suddenly felt a chill on his back. Nye Tian, you've finally returned. In the next moment, a low and murderous voice rang out in midair. It was actually a very familiar voice. Nie Tion's eyebrows furrowed as he spun around and saw a figure standing coldly in midair. Frowning, he said, "Ho Qing, I don't have time for you. Don't provoke me." The person who appeared now was precisely Ho Qing, who had previously fought with Ji Cho Wu for the title of number 1 in Saint Spirit Academy. Back then, Ho Qing disappeared for a very long time before appearing again and successfully defeating Ji Cho Wu. However, he was defeated by Nie Tian again and still failed to become the number 1 in the outer sanctum. After his defeat, he was scolded by Nie Tian and said that he would fight Nie Tian again in 3 months. However, Nie Tian completely ignored him. He waited for 3 months, but Nie Tian had already left Saint Spirit Academy. After that, he waited in the Holy Soul Plaza for Nie Tian to show up. Now that Nie Tian had finally shown up, there was no way he would let him go. "Nie Tian, you didn't show up for our duel. But it doesn't matter, it's not too late to fight now." Ho Qing stood in the air, his entire body emanating an extremely thick killing intent as he said in a wild voice, "I'm now a demi-saint. How are you going to fight me? The number 1 in the outer sanctum is mine, Ho Qing." Ho Qing was very persistent about being the number 1 in the outer sanctum. Back then, Nie Tian had said that a person who cared so much about his reputation was destined to not achieve much in martial arts. The crowd's eyes trembled as if they were looking forward to the duel between Nie Tian and Ho Qing. Desolate Ghost Boundless could not help but look at Ho Qing as if he was looking at an idiot. He was even suspecting that he had misheard or sensed wrongly that Ho Qing really was a demi-saint. A first-stage demi-saint actually dared to challenge Nie Tian? Just what kind of brain did he have? With Nie Tian's current ability, he would not be afraid even if he ran into a high-level demi-saint. Nie Tian simply ignored Ho Qing and headed straight for the Holy Soul Grand Hall. "Nie Tian, how dare you ignore me?" Ho Qing was instantly enraged at being ignored. With a low roar, his figure moved like a bolt of lightning towards Nie Tian. Hiss! The crowd could not help but gasp when they felt Ho Qing's killing intent, as if they could already see the scene of Nie Tian being killed with a single strike. "Get out of my way!" Nie Tian strode forward and did not even look back. With a low roar, his entire body unleashed a wave of sword aura. How? In an instant, Ho Qing sensed a huge killing intent and screamed as the sword aura all over his body was immediately shattered. Bang! In the next moment, his figure was sent flying and smashed heavily onto the ground, leaving a bloody trail behind. The sudden and bizarre scene left the crowd stunned. Their eyes trembled and they could not speak for a long time. They did not even see Nie Tian make a move. How did Ho Qing get defeated? Ho Qing's body trembled as he struggled to stand up, his face filled with extreme shock. He could not believe that Nie Tian had become so powerful at this moment. A single wave of sword aura had directly destroyed him and crippled his yuan meridians, turning him into a cripple. "Why didn't you kill me?" Ho Qing suddenly roared in extreme despair. Rather than crippling him, Nie Tian might as well kill him. "A person like you does not deserve to be a martial artist. Killing you will only dirty my hands," Nie Tian replied coldly without turning his head, and then he ran towards the Holy Soul Hall. Huang Wujiang looked back at Ho Qing, shook his head, and then followed after Nie Tian. The crowd stared at Nie Tian's figure in a daze, as if they were in a dream. They could not react for a long time. After a while, Nie Tian arrived outside the Holy Soul Hall. From afar, he saw a figure in black standing outside the hall, staring at him with an extremely cold gaze. "Kuyo Oniguchi!" Nie Tian could not help but tremble when he saw the figure's face, and he shouted out his name. The jade talisman showed that Huairu was in the Holy Soul Hall. And Kuyo Oniguchi was actually outside the hall. Did something really happen to Huairu? "Nie Tian, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for so long," Kuyo Oniguchi looked at Nie Tian from afar, and his lips curled into a faint smile as he said in a low voice, "Where's Elder Hua?" Nie Tian did not waste any time, and immediately rushed over and growled, "He's waiting for you inside." Kuyo Oniguchi sneered, and then his gaze fell on Huang Wujiang. His eyes were very strange, but he did not say anything. Huang Wujiang also looked at Kuyo Oniguchi, and he could not help but feel nervous when he felt the murderous intent from the latter. Then, Nie Tian and Huang Wujiang entered the hall. Under Kuyo Oniguchi's lead, they came to a secret room in the hall. As soon as they stepped into the secret room, Nie Tian's eyes widened, and he was stunned on the spot. Inside the secret room, a figure was pierced through by several chains. His body was a mess of flesh, and he was barely breathing. Chapter 3190. Sinister and Ruthless. Elder Hua. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw the blood-colored figure in front of him. Nie Tian, you've come after all. Huairu suddenly raised his head. The moment he saw Nie Tian, his murky eyes flickered with a strange light. Elder Hua. Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He took a step forward, wanting to go over. However, Huairu's expression changed. He involuntarily retreated, pulling on the iron chain that pierced through his body. He immediately let out a miserable shriek. Nie Tian was stunned. He stopped moving, not daring to go any closer. It was obvious that Huairu was afraid of something. Humph! At this moment, Kuyo Oniguchi sneered and said, "The chains in his body are engraved with the sacred soul curse. If you go any closer, the curse in your body will be activated. This is not good for you." "You!" Nie Tian's expression darkened. He suddenly looked at Kuyo Oniguchi with a cold and murderous gaze. His entire body was suppressing a terrifying rage. Desolated Ghost instantly tensed up. He began to slowly release his aura. As long as Nie Tian gave the order, he would attack without hesitation. He knew that Kuyo Oniguchi was a terrifying opponent. His strength was probably on par with an expert like the Rakshasa temple leader. Therefore, he had to attack immediately to gain the upper hand. Kuyo Oniguchi suddenly felt that something was amiss. He could not help but turn to look at Desolated Ghost. He laughed and said, "I didn't expect you to be so strong." "There are many things that you didn't expect." Desolated Ghost sneered and looked at Nie Tian. "Nie Tian, I advise you to calm down if you don't want Huairu to die." Kuyo Oniguchi looked at Nie Tian and sneered. Nie Tian suppressed the terrible anger in his eyes. His whole body was trembling, but when he saw Huairu, he calmed down. Kuyo Oniguchi's strength was unfathomable. Even if it was the current boundless ghost desolation, it was impossible for him to be his opponent. Most importantly, if he made a move now, it would undoubtedly put Huairu in great danger. Since Kuyo Oniguchi kept Huairu alive, it meant that he didn't want to kill Huairu. He just wanted to use him as a bargaining chip. Nie Tian, you really are a smart person. Seeing Nie Tian became cold, Kuyo Oniguchi sneered and said, "The chips in my hands are much more than what you see." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his expression changed instantly. He said coldly, "Kuyo Oniguchi, speak clearly." What Kuyo Oniguchi meant was that he had other bargaining chips in his hands. "Come out," Kuyo Oniguchi said lightly with a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure walked out from a secret door in the secret room. The moment he saw the figure clearly, Nie Tian frowned and was stunned. This figure turned out to be the eldest princess of the Holy Moon Dynasty, Jing Yue. In the next moment Nie Tian reacted. His expression suddenly changed, and his eyes trembled violently. He never thought that the person who appeared in front of him at this moment would be Jing Yue. Jing Yue was the eldest princess of the Holy Moon Dynasty. Why would she appear here? Moreover, from Jing Yue's reaction, it seemed that she and Kuyo Oniguchi knew each other, and were very familiar with each other. At this time, Kuyo Oniguchi laughed and said, Yue, Nye Tian is so surprised. Don't you want to introduce our relationship to him? Nye Tian was stunned again, and his eyes could not help but tremble. What was the relationship between Kyo Oniguchi and Jing Yue? Yes, grandfather, Jing Yue said with a slight bow with a cold expression. Grandfather? Nye Tian was stunned, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. He did not expect that Kyo Oniguchi was Jing Yue's grandfather. Could it be that Jing Yue was also a member of the Holy Soul Ghost Valley clan? Nye Tian, Jing Yue turned to look at Nye Tian. She wanted to speak, but did not know what to say. Yue, you don't have to say anything. Nye Tian became cold and waved his hand slightly, indicating that Jing Yue did not need to explain anything. Jing Yue did not know about the grievances between Nye Tian and Kyo Oniguchi. Moreover, her current situation was clearly controlled by Kyo Oniguchi. Kyo Oniguchi, what happened between you and me has nothing to do with Jing Yue. I hope you don't involve her. Nye Tian suddenly raised his head and cold looked at Kyo Oniguchi. Humph. Kyo Oniguchi looked at Nye Tian and could naturally see that the latter cared about Jing Yue. He smiled sinisterly. Nye Tian, what happened between us has nothing to do with Yue. However, she is my granddaughter and your woman, Nye Tian. This dean made her appear just to make you understand that the chips in my hands are more than you can imagine. Nye Tian could hear the threat in Kyo Oniguchi's words. His face turned gloomy and his eyes slightly trembled. He did not expect that Kyo Oniguchi would be so sinister and vicious that he would use his granddaughter as a bargaining chip to threaten him. Nye Tian, it's true that Yue is my granddaughter, but this dean doesn't mind sacrificing her if necessary. Kyo Oniguchi coldly stared at Nye Tian and coldly said. Nye Tian furrowed his brows and suppressed the anger in his eyes. He just looked at Kyo Oniguchi and didn't speak. He believed that Kyo Oniguchi would really kill Jing Yue given how ruthless he was. In the eyes of people like Kyo Oniguchi, kinship and bloodline were just tools that could be used. Kyo Oniguchi, what do you want me to do? After a while, Nye Tian calmed down and said in a deep voice. Kyo Oniguchi had captured Huairu and Jing Yue but did not kill them. He was obviously waiting for Nye Tian to appear. He must have wanted Nye Tian to do something for him. Nye Tian, what stage has the Holy Soul Curse Seal in your body been upgraded to? Kyo Oniguchi's eyes were cold as he looked at Nye Tian and asked. 4th stage. Nye Tian's face was gloomy and cold. When Kyo Oniguchi injected the Holy Soul Curse Seal into his martial body, it was only at the 1st stage. But now, as his strength increased, the Holy Soul Curse Seal had also been upgraded to the 4th stage. Not bad. Kyo Oniguchi's eyes turned slightly hot as he said with a smile, with your rank 3 pseudo-sacred strength, you can actually withstand the rank 4 Holy Soul Curse Seal. This elder is really amazed. It had to be said that Nye Tian's growth speed had far exceeded Kyo Oniguchi's expectations. It had been less than a year since he separated from Nye Tian in the Arctic Ice Mountain. When Nye Tian appeared again, he was actually a rank 3 pseudo-sacred. What a monster! What surprised him even more was that Nye Tian's martial body was far stronger than he had expected. It was terrifying that a rank 3 pseudo-sacred could withstand the rank 4 Holy Soul Curse Seal so easily. You want the Holy Soul Curse Seal in my body? Nye Tian looked at Kyo Oniguchi and had a guess in his heart. Chapter 3191. Crisscrossing Heaven's Seal. Retract the seal? Nye Tian was stunned, his face darkening. He did not know what Kyo Oniguchi meant. Nye Tian, since things have come to this dean will be straightforward with you. Kyo Oniguchi smiled cold and said, you are just a tool to nourish the seal. This dean planted the Holy Soul Seal in your body because I wanted it to grow in your body. The Holy Soul Seal is an evolutionary type seal with an extremely powerful devouring ability. It uses the bloodline power of a martial artist as nourishment and slowly evolve. The stronger the martial artist's talent and bloodline power, the faster the Holy Soul seal will grow. So that's how it is. Nie Tian frowned, his face darkening with killing intent. He did not expect that in Kuyo Oniguchi's eyes, he was just a tool to nourish the seal. Nie Tian, this dean has to admit that you are the most talented martial artist this dean has met in the past hundreds of thousands of years. Then, Kuyo Oniguchi looked at Nie Tian with a gloomy expression and said, "The Holy Soul seal has only been in your body for a few years, but it has grown to rank 4. This is beyond this dean's expectations. You should know that even your father, Nie Fenghua, has not been able to make the Holy Soul seal grow to rank 4. Father, he is also a tool to nourish the seal." Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he said in a deep voice. The blood in his body trembled, as if it would erupt in the next moment like a volcano. Nie Fenghua was Kuyo Oniguchi's disciple, but he was also used as a tool to nourish the seal. In Kuyo Oniguchi's eyes, it seemed that everyone was just a tool. Of course. Kuyo Oniguchi smiled cold and said, "This dean might as well tell you, the reason your father became a traitor was because he did not want to continue nourishing this dean's seal. At that time, he risked his life to force the Holy Soul curse mark out of his body. I had no choice but to expel him from the Holy Soul Academy and engrave his name on the Holy Soul Sin tablet. The reason why I didn't kill him was because I thought that perhaps one day, he would change his mind and be willing to return to my side." As he spoke, Kuyo Oniguchi let out a cold smile. There was some regret on his face as he sighed and said, "Unfortunately, he still refuses to repent." "You actually want to kill me? You've truly wasted my painstaking efforts. Kuyo Oniguchi, you deserve to die." After listening to Kuyo Oniguchi's words, Nie Tian's blood surged in his body. His eyes turned scarlet, and his killing intent surged. It was as if he was about to go berserk. At this moment, if he didn't have a shred of rationality left, Nie Tian would have definitely attacked. Kuyo Oniguchi was so vicious, but he still had an innocent look on his face. How could Nie Tian not be angry? Nie Tian, your anger right now, in this dean's eyes, is nothing but a joke. Kuyo Oniguchi looked at Nie Tian and smiled coldly. Remember this dean's words. To the strong, the anger of the weak is never a threat, but a joke. Nie Tian's gaze was gloomy, his entire body was bursting with anger. He squeezed the words out of his teeth and said in a deep voice, "Kuyo Oniguchi, I, Nie Tian, am not as good as you right now. But you will not always be strong. It won't be long before I'll step on your head and show you who's the real expert." "Is that so?" Kuyo Oniguchi smiled cold and said, "This dean will be waiting for that day to come." Nie Tian's face was so gloomy that it looked like it was bleeding. After a long time, he calmed down and said in a deep voice, "Kuyo Oniguchi, tell me your real purpose. Nie Tian, do you know why this dean wants to cultivate the Holy Spirit incantation?" Kuyo Oniguchi's eyes slightly sank as he asked with a pondering expression. "Get to the point." Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense with Kuyo Oniguchi and said cold. Kuyo Oniguchi was stunned for a moment, but he still said, "You should already know that this dean is from the Holy Spirit Ghost Valley clan. And the Holy Spirit Ghost Valley clan is one of the 4 great ancient clans. A long time ago, the Holy Spirit Ghost Valley clan made a mistake and was sealed in the Ghost Valley. For so many years, this dean has always wanted to break the Ghost Valley clan's seal and unseal the Ghost Valley clan. But the seal that seals the Ghost Valley clan is called the Unstoppable Heavenly Seal. It's not that easy to break the seal. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, this dean knew that the Holy Spirit incantation is the key to breaking the unstoppable heavenly seal. Since then, this dean has been cultivating the Holy Spirit incantation. But it's a pity that none of the people this dean found could nurture a strong enough Holy Spirit incantation. Until your appearance, this dean saw hope. At this point, Kuyo Oneguchi paused for a moment, his eyes swept across Nye Tian and continued, "This dean originally planned to wait until the Holy Spirit incantation in your body is strong enough before taking back the incantation. But not long ago, the Ghost Valley clan's earth vein suddenly became unstable, which forced this dean to take out the Holy Spirit incantation in your body in advance." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Without hesitation, he said, "If you want the Holy Spirit incantation, I can return it to you anytime. Just come and take it." To Nye Tian, the Holy Spirit incantation was a burden. He did not want it in the first place. If Kuyo Oneguchi wanted to take it away, he would be more than happy to have it. "Nye Tian, it's not as simple as you think." Kuyo Oneguchi laughed and said, "Although the Holy Spirit incantation in your body has grown to the 4th rank, it's still far from enough to break the unstoppable heavenly seal." Nye Tian's eyes darkened as he asked coldly, "What do you want me to do?" "Your strength must increase, at least raise the Holy Spirit incantation to the 6th rank." Kuyo Oneguchi said cold. Upon hearing Kuyo Oneguchi's words, Nye Tian's eyes widened, and his expression stiffened. Back when he had received the Holy Spirit incantation, he had only been a peak paramount god. Even after reaching the 3rd rank, he had only been able to raise the Holy Spirit incantation to the 4th rank. But now, Kuyo Oneguchi wanted the Holy Spirit incantation to the 6th rank. How was he supposed to get it? He guessed that even if he reached the 9th rank, he wouldn't be able to raise the Holy Spirit incantation to the 6th rank. The Ghost Valley clan was forcing his hand. "Nye Tian, I know that it won't be easy for you to raise the Holy Spirit incantation to the 6th rank, but you have to do it." Kuyo Oneguchi looked coldly at Nye Tian, then at Huairu and Jing Yue. His threat was clear. If Nye Tian couldn't get the Holy Spirit incantation to the 6th rank, he would kill Huairu and Jing Yue without the slightest hesitation. "How much time do I have?" Nye Tian asked coldly, his eyes darkening. It was impossible for him to raise the Holy Spirit incantation to the 6th rank right away. Kuyo Oneguchi had to give him time. 3 months, Kuyo Oneguchi said with a faint smile, "That's the longest I can give you." 3 months? Nye Tian was taken aback, and his face stiffened. Chapter 3192. Divine Evolution. Saint Spirit. When Nye Tian heard Kuyo Oneguchi's 3-month deadline, his face stiffened and he was speechless for a long time. No matter how talented he was, he couldn't upgrade the Saint's Soul Curse to the 6th stage in such a short time. "Grandpa, 3 months is too short for Nye Tian." At this time, Jing Yue stepped forward and said with her beautiful eyes twinkling, "Yue, Grandpa gave Nye Tian 3 months. That's the maximum deadline." Kuyo Oneguchi smiled coldly and stared at Jing Yue with cold eyes. "Your mother has already woken up. Grandpa can wait, but your mother can't. If the Ghost Valley cannot be opened within 3 months, your mother will be dead for sure." This. Jing Yue's beautiful eyes trembled and her pretty face stiffened. She was completely speechless. Nye Tian frowned and his tensed face instantly turned gloomy. How could he not hear that Kuyo Oneguchi had actually controlled Jing Yue's mother? Jing Yue's mother was Kuyo Oneguchi's daughter. Kuyo Oneguchi dared to use his own daughter as a hostage. The viciousness in his heart was outrageous. Previously, Nye Tian heard from Jing Yue that the latter was currently under a powerful curse and had fallen into eternal slumber. Now it seemed that the curse on Jing Yue's mother was clearly the Saint Soul Curse. Nye Tian guessed that Kuyo Oneguchi should have used Jing Yue's mother as a vessel to nourish the curse. Kuyo Oneguchi was simply insane to use his own daughter as a tool. Such a father was worse than a beast. "Nye Tian, you also don't want Yue's mother to die, right?" Kuyo Oneguchi looked at Nye Tian and said with a faint smile. Nye Tian's face was gloomy and he didn't say anything. Kuyo Oneguchi's viciousness and maliciousness had exceeded his expectations. Even talking to this kind of person made him sick. "Nye Tian, you can leave now." This dean will wait for you here. 3 months from now, we'll meet again. Kuyo Onaguchi didn't want to talk too much with Nie Tian, so he said with a faint smile. Nie Tian's cold eyes swept over Kuyo Onaguchi and then looked at Jing Yue. He took a step forward with a firm look and said, Yue, wait for me to come back. Yes, yes, yes. Jing Yue nodded heavily. Although she tried her best to remain calm, tears still fell from her eyes. Nie Tian's heart trembled, and he immediately felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. He stepped forward and wiped away the tears on Jing Yue's face without saying anything. Then, he came to Huairu's side. Seeing the latter's painful look, his heart was once again filled with anger. Kuyo Onaguchi, I promise you that I'll come back in 3 months. Remove the curse on Elder Hua. Nie Tian suddenly turned around to look at Gui Gu and said in a deep voice. That won't do. Kuyo Onaguchi laughed and said, Huairu isn't an ordinary person. At the Arctic Ice Mountain, he once showed his strength that was almost comparable to a sage. If I remove the curse, I won't be able to feel at ease. You! Nie Tian's face darkened and he suddenly became speechless. Nie Tian, forget it. At this moment, Huairu spoke in a low voice, I can still bear this little pain. Nie Tian looked at Huairu with a gloomy gaze and clenched his fists secretly. He could see that Huairu must have suffered unimaginable inhuman torture during this period of time. However, his current strength was limited, and he couldn't save Huairu immediately. He could only suffer for a while longer. Kuyo Onaguchi, I have something to say to Nie Tian, please leave. Huairu suddenly raised his head, and his eyes flickered with a strange light as he spoke with difficulty. All right. Kuyo Onaguchi was stunned for a moment, then he smiled and said to Jing Yue, Yue, let's go. Jing Yue nodded and looked at Nie Tian for a long time before leaving with Kuyo Onaguchi. Nie Tian looked at Jing Yue's figure with trembling eyes, suppressing the terrifying anger in his heart. Seeing his woman being threatened and taken away, the pain was indescribable. However, he had no choice but to suppress the pain in his heart. Pain was also the motivation for Nie Tian to become stronger. He swore that he would make Kuyo Onaguchi pay the most painful price. After a while, Nie Tian became cold and asked Huairu, Elder Hua, what do you want to say to me? Nie Tian, you really didn't let me down. Huairu looked at Nie Tian, the corners of his mouth slightly curled up, revealing a trace of a smile on his face. Elder Hua, you. At this time, Nie Tian suddenly felt that Huairu's aura seemed to have changed. It was very strange, and he couldn't help but frown in surprise. Nie Tian, I'm fine. Huairu's eyes trembled slightly, and he no longer spoke. Instead, he transmitted his voice, There is one thing I want to tell you. The power to unseal the 3rd star mark Dark Seal is in the Traversing Heavenly Seal. Traversing Heavenly Seal? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he immediately reacted. The Traversing Heavenly Seal was the seal that sealed Gue Gudian, and it was also the seal that Kuyo Onaguchi had always wanted to unseal. He never thought that there would be something in the Traversing Heavenly Seal that could unseal the 3rd star mark Dark Seal. Nie Tian, the 3rd star mark Dark Seal can only be unsealed with the power of the ancient 9 Saint Souls. Huairu continued, I have confirmed that the Sky Evolution Saint Soul, one of the ancient 9 Saint Souls, is sealed in the Traversing Heavenly Seal. As long as you absorb the power of the Sky Evolution Saint Soul, you can unseal the 3rd star mark Dark Seal. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he could clearly feel the passion in Huairu's eyes. He now understood why Huairu was a teacher in the Saint Soul Academy. It turned out that it was for the Sky Evolution Saint Soul. He didn't understand the Sky Evolution Saint Soul at all, but he knew that it must be a very terrifying power. The unsealing of the star mark Dark Seal should be getting more and more difficult. The 2nd star mark Dark Seal was unsealed, and Nie Tian absorbed a sacred world seed. The third star marked dark seal required one of the primordial 9 great saint souls. He guessed that the power of the sky evolution saint soul might be stronger than the sacred world seed. Nye Tian, within 3 months, you must raise the saint soul seal to the 6th rank. Huairu looked at Nye Tian and said solemnly. Nye Tian nodded, but his expression didn't look good. Of course, he wanted to raise the saint soul seal, but it was not an easy task. Nye Tian, I know of a method that can raise the grade of the incantation seals. However, you must first find a cultivator who possesses the 10 most powerful seals. Huairu stared at Nye Tian with a burning gaze and said, "It would be best if it is a seal with a strong perception, such as the 3,000 demon seal." 3,000 demon seal? When Nye Tian heard Huairu's words, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. After a scream, he was stunned on the spot. "You know about the 3,000 demon seal?" Huairu asked in surprise when he saw Nye Tian's expression. Chapter 3193. The 3,000 Seals of the Hidden Dragon. Not only did Nye Tian know about the 3,000 seals, but he was also very familiar with them. In the 3,000 Small Worlds, one of his best brothers, Jean de Bao, was someone who had the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons. That was why Nye Tian was so excited when he heard Huairu mention the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons. Huairu looked at Nye Tian, his eyes trembling as he asked, "Have you seen a warrior who has the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons?" "Yes." Nye Tian nodded heavily. "Elder Hua, I have a brother who has the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons. It's just that I haven't seen him for many years. I don't know how strong he is and how many of the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons have been awakened. His strength is not important. The most important thing is that this person must be trustworthy." "Elder Hua, don't worry. My fierce brother is definitely trustworthy." Nye Tian smiled faintly, his face firm. Jean de Bao might not be very talented in martial arts, but he was definitely trustworthy. "That's good." Hua Ming nodded. "After you find this person, you will need something else." "What is it?" Nye Tian asked, his eyes trembling. "Ice Blue Nightmare." Huairu's mouth twitched as he said indifferently. "An ice blue nightmare?" Nye Tian was taken aback. He had no idea what it was. Huairu didn't explain too much. Instead, he said, "Take out the jade talisman I gave you." Nye Tian took out the jade talisman and handed it to Huairu. The latter took it with difficulty, injected a strand of his divine sense into the jade talisman, and then returned it to Nye Tian. "Nye Tian, take the jade talisman to the headquarters of the Myriad Domains Guild and find a person called Xiahou Yao. Then, give the jade talisman to him. Leave the rest to him." Huairu smiled faintly and nodded. "Yes." Nye Tian nodded, secretly remembering the name Xiahou Yao. Since this person was trusted by Huairu, he was trustworthy. "Nye Tian, you only have 3 months. Be careful." Huairu let out a long breath and said solemnly. Nye Tian nodded and said, "Elder Hua, I won't let you down." Next, Nye Tian didn't linger. Together with Desolate Ghost Boundless Desolate, they left the Holy Soul Palace and headed towards the space-time formation of the Holy Soul Academy. Along the way, everyone cast strange looks at Nye Tian. Nobody expected that Nye Tian would actually dare to return to Saint Spirit Academy, and moreover still be able to swagger away. Nye Tian ignored all these gazes and headed straight for the space-time Grand Array. He only had 3 months, so he had to make every second count in the remaining time. He had to return to the 9 regions first. Jean de Bao should be in the 9 regions now. Back when Nye Tian was in the 9 regions, after the Evil Edge Sword competition, he had asked Ghost Marshal Wild Sand to bring Jean de Bao and the others to the 9 regions and let them join the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda. If there were no surprises, Jean de Bao and his disciples should be in the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda. Nye Tian and Desolate Ghost Boundless Desolate soon arrived outside the space-time Grand Array. But just as they were about to enter the space-time grand array, 3 figures in green appeared in the sky. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he sensed the sharp murderous intent. He couldn't help but look at the 3 figures. These 3 martialists were all young martialists, but they were very strong. 2 of them had the strength of a 5th-stage pseudosage, while the other was a 6th-stage pseudosage. They were considered geniuses to have such strength at their age. The appearance of these 3 excited the crowd below. Look, the 3 of them seem to be on the Hidden Dragon ranking. They really are Hidden Dragon martialists. The guy in the middle is actually on the Hidden Dragon roll, Jing Liuguang. The other 2 seem to be 2nd and 3rd on the Hidden Dragon roll, Feng Wuhan and Long Tingxiao. The top 3 of the Hidden Dragon roll have appeared at the same time. This has never happened before. The crowd looked at the 3 martialists in shock. The martialists on the Hidden Dragon roll of the Holy Soul Academy were originally very secretive. Many people had been in the academy for hundreds of years, and it was rare for them to see a Hidden Dragon martialist. But now, the Hidden Dragon roll had appeared at the same time. How could the crowd not be surprised? Nie Tian frowned as he looked at the Hidden Dragon roll. Looking at the posture of these 3, it was obvious that they were here for him. But he had no intention of paying attention to them. Instead, he walked directly towards the space-time grand array. Son of a traitor, do you want to swagger away after returning to the Holy Soul Academy? But at this moment, Jing Liuguang, who was on the Hidden Dragon roll, sneered. His voice was deep and filled with a strong murderous intent. You want to stop me? Nie Tian frowned. He looked up at Jing Liuguang and smiled coldly. It was no coincidence that the Hidden Dragon roll had appeared at the same time. Nie Tian could guess with his toes that this must have been arranged by Kuyo Oniguchi. But he did not understand why Kuyo Oniguchi would do this. Nie Tian only had 3 months. Wasn't it a waste of time for these 3 to come and cause trouble? Nie Tian, you can't leave today. Jing Liuguang laughed coldly. The murderous intent in his eyes intensified. He gathered his aura, and a strange aura surged around him. Holy Soul Curse Mark. Nie Tian's gaze froze and his expression changed. He immediately reacted. Jing Liuguang and the other 2 were all people who had been cursed by the Holy Soul Curse Mark. But thinking about it, this was not strange. After all, the Hidden Dragon roll's top 3 were all monstrous geniuses. How could Kuyo Oniguchi let go of such a good vessel to nourish the curse mark? And at this moment, Nie Tian also understood why Kuyo Oniguchi had let Jing Liuguang and the other 2 appear. He wanted Nie Tian to kill Jing Liuguang and the other 2 and absorb the Holy Soul curse mark in their bodies. Jing Liuguang and the other 2 might have received the Holy Soul curse mark earlier than Nie Tian, but the level of their Holy Soul curse mark was definitely not as high as Nie Tian's. So, these 3 were abandoned by Kuyo Oniguchi. But the 3 of them definitely did not know this. They thought that Kuyo Oniguchi had wanted them to kill Nie Tian. Nie Tian understood this. His gaze darkened and he said cold, I don't want to kill anyone. You can scram. You don't want to kill anyone? As soon as Nie Tian's voice fell, Feng Wuhan, who was behind Jing Liuguang, stepped forward and said cold, You, a 3rd-tier pseudosage scum, dare to say such words? As he said that, his figure moved, wanting to attack directly. But at this moment, another figure had already moved. Brother Jing, Brother Feng, it's just an ant. There's no need for you to do anything. Watch me kill him. Long Tingxiao's figure was like a dragon. He was extremely fast. With a sneer, a violent aura erupted from his body. Like a tumbling sea, the aura pressed down on Nie Tian like a raging wave. Courting death. Desolate Ghost growled when he saw this. He took a step forward and wanted to attack. Desolate Ghost, let me do it. At this moment, Nie Tian waved his hand and stopped Desolate Ghost. Chapter 3194. Dark Night. Again. Long Tingxiao's sudden attack caused the crowd's eyes to tremble and their expressions to change. Long Tingxiao was one of the top 3 hidden dragon warriors, and his strength had reached the 5th rank. Would Nie Tian be able to take his attack? Boom. However, at this moment, Nie Tian took a step forward and a surge of sword force shot up into the sky. It was incomparably violent and bombarded the void. Boom! Bang bang bang! Then, the soaring sword force rushed over and the aura around Long Tingxiao collapsed. Long Tingxiao's figure was sent flying for hundreds of meters before he managed to stabilize himself. However, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. How is this possible? His eyes darkened and he cried out in shock. He couldn't believe what had just happened. He was a 5th-rank pseudo-sage expert, but he couldn't even take the sword force of a 3rd-rank pseudo-sage. It was simply too unbelievable. Everyone was equally shocked, and the shock in their hearts was written on their faces. How did Nie Tian do it? How can his sword force be so strong? Is this kid a monster? I heard that he came from another realm. When he was at the academy, he wasn't even a half-sage. Now, he actually has the strength of a 3rd-rank pseudo-sage. This is too scary. Even Long Tingxiao is no match for this kid. This kid is really abnormal. The scene just now was like a dream. It made everyone feel that it was unreal, and they all exclaimed in shock. Long Tingxiao, if I'm an ant, then what are you? Are you not even as good as an ant? Nie Tianling said coldly and looked at Long Tingxiao with a gloomy expression. Long Tingxiao's eyes trembled and he couldn't say a word. Each of Nie Tian's words was like a resounding slap to his face. That was a warning. If you dare to attack again, I will definitely kill you. Nie Tian didn't care about him anymore. He said with a cold gaze and walked towards the space-time formation again. Jing Liuguang and the other 2 were stunned. Then, they reacted and a fierce light flashed in their eyes. Nie Tian didn't want to kill them, but they wanted to kill Nie Tian. Do it! In the next instant, Jing Liuguang roared in a low voice. His silhouette flickered as his aura surged. He slammed out with his palm, unleashing an incomparably violent palm energy that transformed into a palm silhouette that shot towards Nie Tian. Boom! Boom! At the same time, Feng Wuhan and Long Tingxiao also made their move. Their surging power caused the air to tremble violently as they attacked Nie Tian. Everyone's eyes widened in shock when they saw this. It was very rare for the top 3 of the Hidden Dragon Class A to work together. What was even rarer was that the person they wanted to kill was only a pseudo-sage 3rd-order cultivator. Since you're looking for death, don't blame me. Nie Tian's lips twitched as he sensed the terrifying aura in the air. He spoke coldly. He had already given the 3 of them a warning, but they still didn't give up and insisted on killing him. He couldn't be blamed for this. 9 limits of starry sky, slash of the heavens. In the next moment, Nie Tian spun around, his aura surging madly as he unleashed his boundless sword intent. The star heavenly slash slashed out. Like a raging dragon, the sword image soared into the sky, giving rise to a raging sword cry. Retreat! The terrifying sword silhouette exploded with a terrifying amount of qi. Jing Liuguang's eyes widened and he shrieked in fear. Then, his silhouette froze. He wanted to retreat, but it was too late. Boom! The sword silhouette clashed and the light from the sword illuminated the sky. It was extremely dazzling. However, within this dazzling light, there was a terrifying amount of killer's intent. At that moment, everyone's eyes widened. They saw that wherever the sword silhouette passed by, there was blood everywhere. Jing Liuguang, Feng Wuhan, and Long Tingxiao. The top 3 Hidden Dragon Class A cultivators had died without even a corpse left. Merely one sword and Nie Tian had killed the top 3 Hidden Dragon Class A cultivators. Everyone's eyes widened as they all turned to stone and turned into wooden blocks. Nie Tian's strength had already exceeded their expectations. It was far from what they could imagine. At that moment, Nie Tian's face was calm. He looked into the sky and found 3 black vortexes that were surging with the strong aura of the Holy Soul Curse Seal. These 3 vortexes were the Holy Soul Curse Seals that Jing Lu Guang and the other 2 had left behind. However, Nye Tian suddenly raised his hand, and 3 streaks of sword chi shot out, directly shattering the 3 vortexes. He did not absorb the Holy Soul Curse Seals of Jing Lu Guang and the others, but directly shattered them. In the distant sky, a hidden figure saw this scene. His eyes darkened and his expression was ugly. This figure was none other than Kuyo Oniguchi. Nye Tian had guessed correctly. Jing Lu Guang and the others had been arranged by Kuyo Oniguchi. But Kuyo Oniguchi did not expect that Nye Tian's strength was actually powerful to such an extent. He could kill Jing Lu Guang and the other 2 with 1 sword. What made Kuyo Oniguchi even more surprised was that Nye Tian had actually directly shattered the 3 Holy Soul Curse Seal vortexes. After a moment, Kuyo Oniguchi's eyes darkened as he said viciously in his heart, Nye Tian, in 3 months, if the Holy Soul Curse Seal in your body has not reached the 6th stage, this Dean will definitely kill you personally. He had arranged for Jing Lu Guang and the other 2 to help Nye Tian. But Nye Tian did not care at all. Instead, he shattered the Holy Soul Curse Seal. This made him feel like he had been slapped in the face. Nye Tianling stood where he was, the corner of his mouth curling into a cold smile. Although he did not know where Kuyo Oniguchi was, he knew that the latter was definitely observing in the dark. He wanted to use this method to let Kuyo Oniguchi feel his resistance. Desolate Ghost, let's go. Then, Nye Tian looked at Desolate Ghost and the 2 entered the space-time Grand Array together. God-forbidding domain. Nye Tian directly said to one of the cultivators guarding the Grand Array. The latter's sluggish expression returned to his face, and he nodded repeatedly. Under countless shocked gazes, Nye Tian and Desolate Ghost disappeared into the space-time Grand Array. In the God-forbidding realm of the 9 realms, 2 figures appeared in a dark void. They were none other than Nye Tian and Boundless Ghost Desolation. I'm back. Nye Tian felt the familiar aura in the space. The corner of his mouth twitched and he faintly smiled. At this moment, he wished he could immediately go to the Wind and Cloud Alliance to see Nye Dao and the others. He really wanted to know if the Nye family's ancestral land would open again. The people he was most concerned about were naturally Emo Rushi and the child in her belly. It had been more than 9 years since Emo Rushi entered the Nye family's ancestral land to avoid danger. This also meant that Nye Tian and Emo Rushi's child was about to be born. Thinking of this, Nye Tian felt inexplicably excited. Then, Nye Tian did not waste any time and immediately headed to 9 Heaven City. A day later, Nye Tian and Desolate Ghost arrived in the sky above the 9 Heavens mountain range. The moment the 2 set foot on the 9 Heavens mountain range, they felt something was wrong at the same time, and their expressions couldn't help but change. The surroundings were dead silent, filled with a murderous aura. Nye Tian and Desolate Ghost looked at each other, nodded slightly, and became cautious. At this moment, in the surrounding void, countless figures in black appeared, and instantly surrounded the 2. Nye Tian frowned, and his expression changed slightly. Then, his eyes locked on a ghastly white face, and he called out the other party's name. Dugu Kan. Chapter 3195. Dugu Kan. Nye Tian's gaze sharpened when he saw an old acquaintance again. His eyes shone with a sharp killing intent. Nye Tian, you've finally appeared. Dugu Kan's skull-like pupils shrank slightly. Endless killing intent emanated from his body, filling the surrounding space with an extremely intense killing intent. How could he control the anger and killing intent in his heart when he saw Nye Tian again? Back when he killed the royal princess of the Holy Moon Dynasty, Dugu Kan, the great elder of the Evernight Empire, had personally led a dozen or so wards masters to set up a powerful barrier. But in the end, this meticulously planned assassination had been ruined by Nye Tian. Not only that, but the dozen or so wards masters had all died tragically. Even Dugu Khan, the great elder, had almost died. At that time, Nye Tian had only been a superior god. To Dugu Khan, this matter was a great humiliation. For this, he had not hesitated to put Nye Tian's name on the heavenly kill list of the Evernight Empire. But after so much time had passed, Nye Tian was still alive. As long as Nye Tian was alive, Dugu Khan felt a thorn in his back and a fishbone in his throat. He could not eat or sleep in peace. Now that he saw Nye Tian again, he wanted nothing more than to rush up and torture Nye Tian to death. But he did not do so, because he had other thoughts about Nye Tian. "Looks like you've been waiting for me for a long time," Nye Tian said coldly as he looked at Dugu Khan with a sharp gaze. Judging from the formation, Dugu Khan had clearly been lying in wait for Nye Tian to appear. It was obvious that Dugu Khan had found out Nye Tian's identity, which was why he had brought people to the Nine Heavens mountain range to wait for him. At that moment, Nye Tian could not help but worry. Would Dugu Khan attack the people from the Wind and Cloud Alliance? "Nye Tian, I didn't expect you to be from one of the 9 core regions." Dugu Khan could not control his hatred. He gritted his teeth and said, "A warrior like you actually appeared in the 9 regions. What a pleasant surprise." But what surprised me even more was that you were the person that the Juying Shrine wanted. Juying Palace? When Nye Tian heard this name, his eyes narrowed and his face darkened. It turned out that Juying Temple had come looking for Evernight. It was no wonder. The Evernight was the #1 assassin organization in the Myriad Regions. It was said that they could kill anyone in the Myriad Regions. Although the Juying Temple was powerful, they couldn't chase after Nye Tian throughout the 10,000 territories. The price was too high, and the chances of success were not high. Nighttime was different. Their claws and teeth were all over the Myriad Regions, and they were searching for Nye Tian on a large scale. "QL 11-inch Nye Tian, if you know what's good for you, you'd surrender and come with me," Dugu Khan said sinisterly. An evil aura circulated on his bony face. "Do you think I'm the type to surrender?" Nye Tian laughed coldly. "Back then, I only had the strength of an overgod. You weren't even a match for me. Now you want to catch me? You're delusional. Arrogant." Dugu Khan was immediately enraged. He roared, "Attack!" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As his voice fell, a group of black-robed figures appeared, releasing a terrible aura in the air. When they linked together, it was extremely terrifying. When Nye Tian saw this, his expression darkened and his expression changed. These black-robed warriors were all at the false sage realm. The weaker ones were at the 1st rank, while the stronger ones were at the 5th rank. At this time, they seemed to have formed a terrible boundary in the air. The power of the boundary released a strong strangling power in the void. Even more terrifying was that the power of the boundary allowed these warriors to easily resist the special spacetime suppression of the 9 regions. "Nye Tian, let me deal with them." At this time, Desolation Ghost took a step forward. His aura exploded, but his body suddenly swayed and he spat out a mouthful of blood. "What's going on?" Desolation Ghost's eyes trembled. He was shocked. The moment he released his aura, an extremely terrifying pressure came from the surrounding space, causing him to spit out blood on the spot. "Desolation Ghost, leave these people to me." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and he signaled Desolation Ghost to retreat. Desolation Ghost was not from the 9 regions, so he was suppressed by the 9 regions spacetime. Previously, he had been restraining his aura, so he only felt a slight suppression. Desolation Ghost frowned and retreated. "Nye Tian, do you really think you can fight against so many pseudo-saint warriors by yourself?" Dugu Khan sneered and said in a loud voice, "I have set up a double-layer boundary. These false sage martial artists are not suppressed by the 9 regions spacetime. Today you're dead." "Is that so?" Nye Tianling laughed, his face gloomy and stern. Only then did he realize that the surrounding void had already been set up with a layer of boundary. Just now, these false sage martial artists had activated another layer of boundary, which allowed them to temporarily break free from the 9 regions spacetime suppression. Actually, what Dogukan said was not complete. These martial artists were actually protected by the 3 layers of boundary. Each of them had also swallowed a divine elixir, which contained boundary power to resist the spacetime suppression. In this way, the 3 layers of boundary could barely resist the 9 regions spacetime suppression. The 9 regions spacetime was extremely unique. Even a peak false sage martial artist could only exert the strength of a peak supreme god without any means of resistance. The 9 regions spacetime suppression was more like a plane barrier, suppressing the strength of all martial artists below the half-saint level. Only those who were born in the 9 regions could resist the spacetime suppression. If it were not for the existence of the spacetime suppression, any expert from other domains could be an invincible existence. At this moment, even if Dogukan and the others activated the 3 layers of boundary, they could only maintain it for a short period of time. Not only did the 9 regions spacetime suppress the martial artists, but it also suppressed the boundary and formation from the outside world. Attack! At this moment Dogukan roared. His voice reverberated in the void, which was extremely ear-piercing. Kill! Dozens of martial artists in black roared at the same time, and immediately attacked. Their violent auras linked together, and a terrifying strangulation force appeared in the void, pressing down on the void. It whistled out, forming a strangulation storm in the air, and pressed down on Nyetian. Watch out! When the desolate ghost saw this scene, his eyes could not help but tremble as he cried out. The aura of the strangulation storm was extremely violent and terrifying, as if it was going to tear everything apart. Nyetian frowned slightly. He did not expect the joint attack of dozens of martial artists to be so terrifying. Sacred heaven-defying sword, sky sword reverses the sun. In an instant, Nyetian did not hesitate. He let out a low roar, and sword intent burst out of his body. At the same time, violent blood chi surged out of his body. Chapter 3196. Rumble. High up in the sky, an incomparably violent strangulation storm swept through the dark clouds in the void. The surrounding space became incomparably dark under the terrifying power, as if the world was about to be destroyed. Nyetian, you're dead. Upon seeing this, Dogukan's bony face trembled with excitement, as if he could already see the scene of Nyetian being minced into mincemeat. Nyetian was a thorn in his heart. If he couldn't kill Nyetian, he wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Buzz! At this moment, a clear and intense sword cry rang out in the void. It was as if it had the power to pierce through the clouds and split rocks. The dazzling sword radiance was crimson in color as it cut through the gloomy sky. The defying sacred heaven sword, defying the sun coupled with Nyetian's fiend god blood chi, it even stimulated the power of the 9 heavenly shackles in his body. The power of this sword was beyond imagination. Rumble! Hiss hiss hiss. In the next moment, 2 terrifying forces collided with each other, causing space to rumble. The heavens and the earth were filled with killing intent, and the space trembled. Ear-piercing rumbles resounded incessantly as if the heavens and the earth were about to collapse. So strong! Desolate Ghost's eyes trembled when he saw this scene. Then, he moved and retreated frantically. He didn't expect Nyetian's strength to be so terrifying. Previously, he had fought with Nyetian. Although they were evenly matched, he had never used the Hand of Destruction. However, he had never used the Hand of Destruction before, so he had always assumed that his battle prowess was higher than Nyetian's. Moreover, after merging with the Azure Dragon Astral Soul, his strength had increased to the 9th stage Pseudo-Sage. But now, after seeing Nyetian's shocking battle strength, he realized that Nyetian's hidden battle strength was no less than his. Therefore, if it was a life-and-death battle, it would be hard to say who would win. However, Nyetian was only a 3rd stage Pseudo-Sage, while Desolate Ghost was a 9th-stage pseudo-sage. Furthermore, he was a 9th-stage pseudo-sage who had awakened the Hand of Destruction. One could well imagine how terrifying Nye Tion's talent was. At this moment, Desolate Ghost Boundless truly realized the disparity between him and Nye Tion. At this point, he no longer had any desire to compete with Nye Tion. Boom! Bang bang bang! At this moment, a loud explosion erupted high up in the sky. Waves of violent energy surged out and wreaked havoc in the space. The strangulation storm in the void was forcefully broken by the sword's shadow and instantly collapsed. How is this possible? The sudden scene caused Dugu-kan to cry out in shock. His pair of skull-like eyes suddenly widened, obviously shocked to the extreme. QL11 He couldn't imagine that Nye Tion, a rank 3 pseudo-sage, could unleash such terrifying power in an instant. All of you must die. At the instant when the whirlwind shattered, Nye Tion's silhouette abruptly moved. A roar akin to that of a ferocious beast erupted from his throat as a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. His silhouette flickered as he unleashed the astral heavenly slash. No! The dozens of martial artists in black immediately felt the approaching aura of death. They couldn't help but scream and retreat instantly. However, their retreat caused the boundary to collapse. Their bodies swayed and they immediately vomited blood. Nye Tianling sneered as the sword shadow descended. In the midst of a shower of blood, dozens of martial artists in black died tragically in an instant. Not even their corpses were left. Dugu-kan was taken aback by the scene in front of him. He couldn't help but retreat. He was so frightened that he couldn't even stand. He originally thought that he would definitely be able to kill Nye Tion if he attacked again. However, Nye Tion's combat strength had far exceeded his expectations. The other martial artists in the surrounding void were also scared out of their wit. Their bodies trembled as they looked at Nye Tion with horror and fear. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that a rank 3 pseudo-sage expert could actually have such heaven-defying combat strength. Nye Tianling stood in the air, his eyes filled with a sharp murderous intent. That strike just now was already his limit. The strangulation storm formed by the dozens of martial artists was really terrifying. If Nye Tion's strength had been slightly weaker, he would have been the one to die. Although these martial artists could resist the suppression of the 9 territories spacetime with the help of the 3-layered boundary, they obviously couldn't completely break free from the suppression. If they had been in another realm, Nye Tion wouldn't have been able to win the battle just now. Dugu-kan, it's your turn. At this moment, Nye Tion suddenly turned around and locked his cold, stern eyes on Dugu-kan. Dugu-kan's body trembled as he felt the almost tangible killing intent. His eyes narrowed in horror. At this moment, his first reaction was to retreat. The next moment, he moved his palm without hesitation and took out a spacetime scroll. Trying to escape? Nye Tion's eyes narrowed and his expression changed. He released all the sword intent in his body and launched the starlight heavenly slash. A terrifying sword shadow appeared, like a brilliant waterfall, as if it was going to split the entire world. Dugu-kan instantly felt the approaching killing intent. He had just opened the spacetime scroll in his hand and a foot had already stepped into it. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. Wah! The sword shadow rolled over and poured down. The incomparably sharp sword shadow exploded with violent power. The next moment, a tragic scene happened. Half of Dugu-kan's body was directly smashed into pieces and turned into a bloody light. The shocking scene made the other martial artists in black stiffen, and their expressions were extremely shocked. Who would have thought that the great elder of Great Evernight, a rank 7 pseudo-sage expert, and a peak spirit formation master would be mercilessly killed in such a way? Dugu-kan would never have dreamed that not only did he fail to kill Nye Tion the second time he personally took action, but he was also killed by Nye Tion so easily. This is the great elder of Great Evernight? What a mess! Nie Tianling laughed and his eyes shone with sharpness. Then, he moved and caught the spacetime scroll in the void. Then, he pulled out the other half of Dugukan's body. Dugukan's other eye, which was like a skull hole, was wide open. It was clear how frightened and desperate he was before his death. The great elder of Evernight's sinful life ended in such a way. It was a pity. At that moment the others reacted. Their eyes trembled and they fled in all directions. Die. Nie Tian's eyes turned cold and the corner of his mouth twitched. He spat out a cold word and thrust out the starlight heavenly slash. Countless sword shadows appeared, like a sky full of arrows, covering the sky and covering the earth. Ah! Where the sword shadows fell, incomparably tragic cries sounded. The void was dyed red. After losing the protection of the spirit formation, the martial artists in black were like chickens and dogs in Nie Tian's eyes. They did not have the slightest ability to resist. They were all assassins of the dark night. God knows how much blood their hands were stained with. Nie Tian naturally would not show them any mercy. So strong. Desolate Ghost watched from the side for a long time. After a long time, he finally reacted and said 2 words. Chapter 3197. You're fatty? All of a sudden, Nie Tian sensed an aura lurking in the air. His face grew grim as he let out a bellow. Get your ass out here! In the next moment, he frowned and roared like a ferocious beast. Then, he reached out his hand and a violent force enveloped a part of the space. Boom! Bang! That expanse of space trembled slightly, and then a muffled bang resounded as a figure emerged from it in a sorry state. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he looked at the figure, and a strange expression appeared on his face. It was a young cultivator. He had handsome features and a tall figure. At first glance, he looked very heroic. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that this person's eyes were rolling around, which made him look like a pervert. It did not match his appearance at all. Nie Tian stared at this person and was stunned for a long time. Finally, he reacted and said, "You're fatty. Fatty Jean de Bao." Nie Tian felt a familiar aura from the person before him. It was Jean de Bao's aura. However, this person's appearance was worlds apart from the Jean de Bao that Nie Tian remembered. The Jean de Bao in the past had the same width from top to bottom. He was like another fat cat. However, the person before him was ridiculously handsome. Nie Tian could not associate him with Jean de Bao. However, this person's aura was exactly the same as Jean de Bao's. His perverted eyes were also the same as Jean de Bao's. Damn! Boss, it's really you! At that moment, the man let out a strange cry and dashed over excitedly, grabbing Nie Tian in his arms. Nie Tian was stunned on the spot. He only reacted when Jean de Bao let go of him. He asked in astonishment, "De Bao, it's really you?" "It's me." "Ah, boss, you can't recognize me anymore, right?" Jean de Bao laughed loudly. He was very proud of himself. Nie Tian swallowed his saliva. After a long time, his expression calmed down. Jean de Bao's transformation was too great. He found it hard to believe. Who would have thought that the guy who was as fat as a ball would actually grow into a handsome young man? Next, Jean de Bao looked at Nie Tian with a wretched look in his eyes and exclaimed, "Boss, your current strength is too amazing." He had been hiding in the void all this while, and had seen everything that had happened. The combat strength that Nie Tian had displayed was simply too terrifying. It was simply abnormal. "It's all right." Nie Tian faintly smiled, then immediately called Desolate Ghost over and said, "Fatty, this is my friend, Desolate Ghost." "Holy shit. Such a domineering name, your father really dotes on you." Jean de Bao looked at the boundless ghost Desolate, laughed and introduced himself. "I am Jean de Bao." Desolate Ghost Boundless Ghost was stunned for a moment before he forced a smile. "Ghost Desolate, Fatty is my good brother. He's just a bit careless. You'll be fine once you get used to it." Nie Tian laughed and nodded. Desolate ghost, boundless ghost nodded and smiled. Fatty, why are you here? Afterwards, Nyetian frowned and could not help but ask. A few months ago, the Alliance Master sent a letter to the Shenwu Sword Pagoda. He said that some strangers had appeared in Nine Heavens City. The Sword Master was worried, so he sent some cultivators to Nine Heavens City to have a look. I came with them, Jean de Bao snickered. Fatty, looks like you're doing quite well in the Shenwu Sword Pagoda, Nie Tian smiled and said. It's all right. Jean de Bao smiled proudly. Boss, I'm already a peak over god now. Haha. Not bad. Nie Tian was stunned and forced a smile. With Jean de Bao's age, it was already very impressive that he was a peak over god. However, compared to Nie Tian, this kind of strength was still far inferior. Fatty, how are the others? How are Duanmu Lu and the others doing? Nie Tian asked. They're doing well. Jean de Bao snickered. Boss, did you know? Duanmu Lu is a monster now. He's already a overgod. The Sword Master wants him to be the next owner of the Divine Sword. Nie Tian's eyes flickered slightly and he smiled faintly. Paramount God Strength. Duanmu Lu had the Octagon Sword Seal and was extremely talented in the way of the sword. It was not bad for him to be a overgod. However, Duanmu Lu was not going to be the owner of the Divine Sword. He still had a long way to go in the way of martial arts. Fatty, other than you, who else has come to Nine Heavens City? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked. I came alone. Duanmu Lu and the others are like madmen, cultivating day and night. They said that when they see you, they won't embarrass you too much. Jean de Bao chuckled. Luckily, I'm not your disciple. Otherwise, I'd have to cultivate every day. It's so boring. Nie Tian laughed and curled his lip. You're just too lazy. Otherwise, your strength wouldn't be below Duanmu Lu's. It's good that I'm lazy. I miss my old physique, haha. Jean de Bao chuckled. Alright, let's return to Nine Heavens City. Nie Tian smiled and didn't say anything else. They headed straight for Nine Heavens City. Soon, the three of them arrived at Nine Heavens City and entered the Wind and Cloud Alliance. Nie Tian, you're finally back. In the Wind and Cloud Grand Palace, Nie Dao laughed heartily as he looked at Nie Tian. His eyes shone with the light of passion and tears. This time, Nie Tian's strength had far exceeded his imagination. He never imagined that Nie Tian could reach such a level of strength. He was very gratified to have such a grandson. Grandpa, are you all right? Nie Tian smiled. After scanning Nie Dao and the others with his divine sense, he felt much more at ease. Yes. Nie Dao nodded heavily. Mr. Hua sent someone to deliver Manjasaka. After we consumed it, our martial bodies have already begun to recover. It won't be long before we completely recover our previous strength. That's good. Nie Tian nodded slightly, a trace of helplessness flashing in his eyes. After consuming Manjasaka, Nie Dao, Nie Feiyu, and the others had yet to completely recover their martial bodies. If they forcefully opened the Nie family's ancestral land, they might be in danger. To be on the safe side, they had to wait for a period of time before opening the Nie family's ancestral land. This way, Nie Tian still wouldn't be able to see Emorushi. He had no choice but to wait for a few more months. With the physical condition of Nie Dao and the others, they would completely recover in a few months at most. There's no need to rush now. Nie Tian smiled inwardly, comforting himself. Grandpa, I heard from de Bao that some unfamiliar martial artists have recently appeared in Nine Heavens City. What's going on? Nie Tian looked at Nie Dao and asked with a frown. Boss, you've already dealt with those strangers. Before Nie Dao could speak, Jean de Bao chuckled and said. Nie Tian was stunned. So the strangers Jean de Bao spoke of were Dugu Kan and the others. Dugu Kan and the others were all killed by Nie Tian. Even if Nightfall wanted to make a move again, it would probably take a long time. Nine Heavens City was definitely safe for the time being. Next, Nye Tian spoke with Nye Dao and the others for a while before leaving the Wind and Cloud Great Hall. Afterwards, Nye Tian followed Jean de Bao to a small courtyard with a unique design. "Boss, I've prepared a surprise for you." Jean de Bao looked at Nye Tian and chuckled mysteriously. Chapter 3198. Registered Teacher, Come. Jean de Bao chuckled and led Nye Tian and the others into the courtyard. "Ling quickly come out, there's an important guest." Just as they entered the courtyard, Jean de Bao shouted loudly. "Ling also came?" Nye Tian's eyes trembled as he exclaimed in surprise. Of course, he knew that the Ling Jean de Bao mentioned was Qiu Ling. Back in the plain world, Jean de Bao had liked Qiu Ling. Until now, the two of them had never separated. "Fatty, are you going to die? Don't you know that little Dan is asleep? What distinguished guest! Can't he just wait outside?" A clear voice came from one of the rooms. It was Qiu Ling. Qiu Ling had a gentle and virtuous personality, but she would not stand on ceremony in front of Jean de Bao. Desolate Ghost Boundless could not help but laugh when he heard Qiu Linger's valiance. "Brother, sorry for making you laugh." Jean de Bao embarrassedly nodded his head and shouted, "Ling the honored guest this time is something you can't imagine. Damn Fatty, if you keep shouting, I'll tear off your ears." Qiu Ling-er's voice rang out from the room once again. Following which, a beautiful silhouette dashed out, looking extremely angry. It was Qiu Ling. However, when Qiu Ling saw the silver-haired man standing in the courtyard, her eyes immediately glazed over. Her little mouth opened wide but no sound came out. "Linger, do you still recognize me?" Nye Tian looked at Qiu Linger and smiled. At this moment, meeting his old friends from the 3,000 small worlds once again made Nye Tian feel as if it had been a lifetime. "Nye, big brother Nye Tian, is that really you?" Qiu Ling took a long time to come to her senses. Tears welled up in her eyes. "It's me." Nye Tian smiled faintly as a warm feeling flowed through his heart. To him, Qiu Ling was like family. "Honey, why are you crying? Your face won't look good if you cry." Jean de Bao walked up to Qiu Ling and wiped her tears. "Damn Fatty, it's none of your business," Qiu Ling said fiercely and then smiled through her tears. Nye Tian shook his head. After so many years, this pair of clowns still hadn't changed. Such a scene made him feel incomparably warm. It seemed that the surprise that Jean de Bao had prepared for Nye Tian was Qiu Ling. It was indeed a pleasant surprise. "Mother, I'm hungry." At this time, a childish voice suddenly rang out. Then, a 3 to 4-year-old child walked out. His little face was chubby and his little hands were rubbing his eyes. It was obvious that he had just woken up. The little guy was very cute, like a porcelain doll. "Little egg, Mommy will carry you." Qiu Ling turned around and took the baby into her arms. Her eyes were filled with love. Nye Tian's eyes widened. Only then did he realize that this child was Jean de Bao and Qiu Ling-er's child. These two fellows were quite fast. "Mother, why are you crying?" The little girl touched Qiu Ling-er's face and asked in a childish voice. "Mommy is very happy." Qiu Ling nodded and then carried little egg to Nye Tian's side. She said to the little girl, "Little egg, this is Mommy and Daddy's big brother. Greet him." Nye Tian chuckled, looking a little embarrassed. He wasn't even a father yet, but he was already an uncle. He looked so fierce. "Yeah, you won't greet him." The little girl looked at Nye Tian and blinked her big eyes for a long time. Then, she suddenly hid in Qiu Ling-er's arms and said timidly. Nye Tian was taken aback and speechless. "Boss, this..." Jean de Bao looked at Nye Tian with an awkward expression. Then, he burst out laughing. Seeing this, Nye Tian and the boundless ghost wasteland also laughed. "Father, Mother, I'm back." Just then, a young voice came from outside the courtyard. Then, a child walked in. His body was covered in mud, but his eyes were very bright. Nye Tian's eyes focused on the child. He was only 3 or 4 years old and looked very similar to Little Egg. However, his body was much more muscular. He was stunned. He didn't expect Jean de Bayo to have 2 children. Boss twins. Jean de Bayo looked at Nyetian and chuckled. He pointed at the little boy and said, "This is the eldest, ergo. The one Ling is carrying is the second little egg." Nyetian looked at Jean de Bayo speechlessly. The name Jean de Bayo was enough to make anyone speechless. He didn't expect these 2 children to be called Jean Ergo and Little Egg. Jean de Bayo's father was truly a weirdo. "Father, mother, who are they?" At this time, Jean Ergo walked over. His eyes were shining as he asked in a deep voice, "Ergo, this person is called Nyetian. He's your father's big brother and also your teacher." Jean de Bayo squatted down and pointed at Nyetian. Nyetian's eyes narrowed. Only now did he realize that Jean de Bayo wanted Jean Ergo to take him as his master. Considering the relationship between Nyetian and Jean de Bayo, this matter naturally wouldn't be a problem. "The teacher you're talking about is him?" Jean Ergo looked at Nyetian with disdain and said, "What ability does he have to be my teacher?" Nyetian's eyes widened as he looked at Doggy Jean. It was hard to believe that a 3-year-old child would say something like this. Jean de Bayo raised his head to look at Nyetian and was speechless. "Ergo, what do you think I should do to become your teacher?" Nyetian chuckled, paused, and looked at Ergo Jean. "I've awakened 9 yuan meridians. How many have you awakened?" Jean Ergo's eyes flashed as he asked. Nyetian's eyes narrowed as he scanned Jean Ergo with his divine sense. This kid was only 3 years old, but he had awakened 9 yuan meridians. This talent was heaven-defying. "Perfect, I've awakened 10 yuan meridians, 1 more than you," Nyetian said with a faint smile. "Impossible. Everyone only has 9 yuan meridians, how can you have 10? Jean Ergo screamed, but his young face froze as he looked at Nyetian in shock. "You really have 10 yuan meridians?" Nyetian's brow furrowed, and he was also taken aback. Not only was this kid's talent heaven-defying, but his perception was even more heaven-defying. He actually found the cosmic origin stone. Jean de Bayo, that fellow, was simply a monster. Boss, Ergo's body also has the 3000 demonic god seal, but it's different from mine. It's stronger. Jean de Bayo looked at Nyetian and chuckled. Nyetian was stunned for a few seconds before he nodded his head and looked at Jean Ergo. "Jean Ergo, are you willing to take me as your teacher?" Jean Ergo hesitated for a long time before he suddenly knelt down and kowtowed to Nyetian 3 times. He stood up and said, "Since you have 1 more yuan meridian than me, I'll let you be my teacher in name." Chapter 3199. Heaven Punishment Formation. Nyetian was speechless. It took him a long time to react. He seemed to have been looked down upon by a 3-year-old child. He had only ever heard of a disciple in name. He had never heard of a teacher in name. This Doggy Jean kid had a mediocre name, but he had high standards. After that, Nyetian didn't enter his room, but rather stayed in the courtyard and explained his situation to Jean de Bayo. "All right, let's go now," Jean de Bayo said without hesitation. "I can give you a few days to arrange things here." Nyetian looked at Jean de Bayo and said with a smile. He had wanted to give Doggy Jean and Jean Yadin a greeting gift, but he didn't have anything suitable for the siblings, so he gave up. Anyway, there was still a long way to go. There was no hurry now. Given his relationship with Jean de Bayo, there was no need for such formalities. No need. Ling and the others are safe here. There's no need to arrange anything. Jean de Bayo laughed, looking unconcerned. Nyetian could tell that Jean de Bayo didn't want to waste time. Moreover, he really didn't have time to waste. After some thought, he prepared to leave immediately. Jean de Bayo bid farewell to Chiu Linger, then left with Nyetian and the others. Nyetian informed Nyedao, then headed straight for the headquarters of the Myriad Domains Guild. The headquarters of the Myriad Domains Guild was located at the edge of the Myriad Domains, the Tianxing Domain. In the myriad domains system, the more peripheral a domain was, the stronger the cultivators were. For example, the Decimo domain that Nye Tian had just been to had even stronger cultivators than the Sacred Soul domain. The Boundless Ghost carried a spacetime scroll with him, so he could travel through the myriad domains. However, the spacetime scroll had a lot of limitations compared to the spacetime formation. An ordinary spacetime scroll would have to wait a long time before it could be used again. The spacetime formation, on the other hand, could be used at any time. For example, the spacetime formation of the Sacred Soul Academy could send cultivators to any domain in the myriad domains. Nye Tian, the Boundless Ghost, and Jean de Bao appeared in the Wind Cloud Square. Boundless Ghost Desolate immediately opened the time-space scroll and entered it. His figure instantly disappeared. The next moment, they arrived in a completely unfamiliar world. The environment here seemed to be different from the other realms. The air was filled with a strange aura that seemed to be some kind of extremely sharp killing intent. Nye Tian checked the surroundings and was relieved after confirming that there was nothing unusual. The Tianqing territory was a completely foreign world to them, so they had to be extremely careful. Next, Nye Tian asked around and found out that the headquarters of the 10,000 Domains Guild was located in the core city of the Tianqing domain, Tianqing City. Their current location was not far from Tianqing City. They were only 10,000 miles away from it. For safety's sake, they didn't ride on any flying mount. Instead, they traveled tens of thousands of miles. 3 days later, the three of them arrived at the core city of the Tianqing territory, Tianqing City. Damn, this city gate is so majestic! Jean de Bao couldn't help but exclaim as he looked at Tianqing City. The city gate of Tianqing City was at least 1,000 meters tall. From the outside, it looked like it was at least 10 meters thick. Furthermore, it was obvious that an array formation was integrated into the city gate to reinforce it. The most imposing thing was that on both sides of the city gate stood 2 giant statues. They were 4,000 to 5,000 meters tall and looked like 2 towering stone pillars. The 2 giant statues each held a giant sword in their hands, looking extremely formidable. According to rumors, Tianqing City was built during the primordial era. Although millions of years had passed, it was still perfectly intact. Most importantly, the entire Tianqing City was enveloped by a primordial great array, which was extremely terrifying. It was said that the existence of this great array was enough to allow Tianqing City to resist the attack of a sage head-on. However, the great array was very powerful. The price of maintaining the great array's operation was also very high. The amount of spiritual materials that the 10,000 Domains Guild expended on the Great Array every year was uncountable. It was likely that in the entire 10,000 domains, only the 10,000 Domains Guild was able to operate such a great array. The reason why the 10,000 Domains Guild's headquarters was built in Tianqing City was probably because of the existence of this great array. Nye Tian, you have to be careful. This Tianqing City is not simple. I'm afraid that everyone who enters the city will be suppressed by the Great Array. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice rang out and reminded Nye Tian. This Great Array probably won't suppress the power of the stars, right? Nye Tian frowned and asked solemnly. That might not be the case. The Ghost Emperor laughed strangely and said, After all, your power of the stars has only unsealed 2 star-marked dark seals. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he became much more cautious. Fortunately, they only wanted to enter the city to look for someone and didn't want to do anything else. Following that, Nye Tian and the other 2 started to line up outside the city gate, waiting to enter the city. Every day, Tianqing City would restrict the entry of outsiders. Everyone who wanted to enter the city had to go through the strictest inspection. They queued for a full 3 days before finally entering the city. After entering the city, Nye Tian discovered that the great array that enveloped Tianqing City was much more terrifying than he had imagined. The suppression of the great array was very strong. Nie Tian could feel that he was only at the heavenly emperor realm. The great array had actually suppressed his strength from close to the sage realm to below the divine realm. Moreover, under the suppression of the great array, the boundary zone formation in his body was operating very slowly. Ghost Emperor, what kind of formation is this? Why is it so strong? Nie Tian frowned and asked the Ghost Emperor. This city is called Tianxing City. This formation should be one of the long-lost primordial 9 formations, the Great Heaven Punisher formation. The Ghost Emperor replied solemnly, clearly very shocked. He didn't expect that the long-lost Great Heaven Punisher formation in the sacred world would actually appear in a domain. The Great Heaven Punisher formation is indeed powerful. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he exclaimed inwardly. Then, the 3 of them entered the inner city. The streets were wide and very lively. Boss, it's very lively here. There are many beauties. Haha. Jean de Bao chuckled and said, I'm going to feast my eyes while Ling isn't here. Nie Tian glanced at Jean de Bao and smiled speechlessly. However, he knew that Jean de Bao was just looking around. He wouldn't do anything reckless. Boss, we might be being followed. At this moment, Jean de Bao suddenly transmitted his voice to Nie Tian and said solemnly, Being followed? Nie Tian was stunned and could not help but frown. They had just arrived at Tianxing City. How could they be followed? Boss, there seems to be more than one person following us. It seems like they have been following us since we entered the city. Jean de Bao frowned and transmitted his voice again. Nie Tian furrowed his eyebrows and slowed down his pace. Stop! At this moment, a clear but deep voice was heard. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He suddenly turned around and saw a white-clothed figure appear behind him. It was a woman in a white dress. Her long hair fluttered in the wind. Her beautiful eyes were surging with a cold determination. Chapter 3200. The Tianxing clan. Nie Tian's eyes widened when he saw the white-robed woman in front of him. The lady in white had an alluring appearance and an extraordinary temperament. Her pure white dress made her look like an orchid in an empty valley, lonely, cold, and arrogant. She stood there like a bloody lotus blossoming on top of an ice mountain, cold and prideful. Plus, this lady gave off a very unique vibe, as if she was a mysterious feeling built up from the unknown. The strangest thing was that there was a very strange aura on this woman's body that made him feel inexplicably familiar. Who are you? Do we know each other? Then, Nie Tian became cold. His gaze froze and he spoke with a faint smile. At the same time, he carefully sensed the aura of the lady in white. However, the more he tried to sense the strange aura from the lady in white, the harder it was for him to do so. Come with me. The white-clothed woman sized up Nie Tian with her cold and beautiful eyes before she spoke in a tone that did not allow for disobedience. Why should I? Nie Tian's gaze froze and he couldn't help but chuckle as the corner of his lips twitched. He and the lady in white did not know each other, yet she wanted to take him away. How could he agree so easily? The identity of the lady in white was unknown. Plus, Nie Tian and his group had just arrived at Tianxing City and were unfamiliar with the place. Therefore, he could not simply follow a stranger. Come with me. The lady in white frowned and the way she looked at Nie Tian turned even colder. There was a hint of anger in her eyes. Nie Tian's expression darkened. This lady was not bad-looking, but her actions were far too overbearing. Boss, this lady is a little strange. After she appeared, the people who were following us seemed to have left. Just then, Jean de Bao suddenly transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. Nie Tian's gaze froze as he exclaimed in his heart. It seemed like this lady in white had an extraordinary identity. Her appearance had scared away the people who were following them. Nie Tian did not know the identity of the people following him, but since the woman in white could scare them away, it was enough to show that her identity was not simple. But this was not the reason why Nie Tian had to go with her. The identity of the woman in white was mysterious, which made Nye Tian even more careful. If you don't leave now, it will be too late. The woman in white saw that Nye Tian was hesitating. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she spoke in a cold tone. Nye Tian laughed and said, "Are you saving me? Bing Hongye, it's been a long time." At this moment, a low voice sounded in midair. Then, a figure descended from the sky and steadily landed between Nye Tian and the woman in white. Nye Tian looked at the figure that suddenly appeared and his eyes narrowed. This was a young man with handsome and resolute features, and his eyes were extremely fierce, yet they revealed a strand of ruthlessness. "It's you, Yuan Tai." The woman in white, whose name was Bing Hongye, saw the young man who suddenly appeared. Her beautiful eyes trembled as she coldly called out his name. "The Bing clan's young lady who has always been living in seclusion, I didn't expect to see you here. What a surprise." The man named Yuan Tai sneered, his eyes surging with a playful glint. His eyes were like tentacles, roaming around Bing Hongye's voluptuous body without restraint. "Yuan Tai, watch your eyes." Bing Hongye's eyes darkened as she growled. "Bing Hongye, it's been so many years, but your cold arrogance hasn't changed at all." The corner of Yuan Tai's lips twitched and he sneered. "Unfortunately, you are no longer the heaven's favored daughter of the past. With the Bing clan's current status, do you still dare to yell at me?" "Yuan Tai, the Bing clan's status is not something you can comment on." Bing Hongye let out a hollow laugh and ignored Yuan Tai. She turned around and looked at Nye Tian. "Let's go." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He was about to say something, but Yuan Tai interrupted him. "Go? Which way?" Yuan Tai let out a hollow laugh. His eyes turned cold as he pointed at Nye Tian and said, "This man is mine for the Yuan clan." The cold voice was filled with an extremely domineering aura. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed after hearing Yuan Tai's words. A cold grin appeared on his face. This guy is even more domineering and unreasonable than Bing Hongye. Meanwhile, Nye Tian was curious as to why Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai were looking for him at the same time. From their words, it seemed like the Bing clan and the Yuan clan were looking for Nye Tian. Since Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai dared to be so arrogant in Tianxing City, it was obvious that their identities were not simple, and the clans behind them were extremely terrifying. At this moment, the surrounding crowd noticed Nye Tian and the others, and they all gathered around them. However, the crowd's attention was not on Nye Tian's group. Instead, they were focused on Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai. "She's Bing Hongye, the eldest daughter of the Bing clan. Why is such a terrifying person here all of a sudden? It's not just Bing Hongye, didn't you see? Even the second son of the Yuan clan is here." The Bing clan and the Yuan clan are both Tianxing clans. It's rare to see two great figures from both clans appearing at the same time. The crowd discussed among themselves with astonished expressions. Their eyes flickered with excitement, as if they were anticipating something. The direct descendants of two Tianxing clans appearing at the same time was a rare sight to see in Tianxing City. Most importantly, everyone in Tianxing City knew that the Bing clan and the Yuan clan were not on good terms. The Tianxing clan sounds pretty powerful. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched as he listened to the crowd's discussion. He smiled inwardly. From the crowd's discussion, he could tell that Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai had high statuses. Heaven's Punishment City was the headquarters of the Myriad Domains Guild, the core of the guild. Since the Bing clan and the Yuan clan were called the Tianxing clans, it meant that the two clans had high statuses in the Myriad Domain Guild. Nye Tian was curious. Why would these two clans look for him all of a sudden? It was as if an invisible hand had appeared the moment he stepped into Tianxing City, trying to control him. Nye Tian had a feeling that Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai were merely pawns of that invisible hand. To be able to manipulate the Bing clan and the Yuan clan like pawns, their statuses and strength were unimaginable. "Yuan Tai, the Bing clan wants him. You'd better not fight for him." Bing Hongye knitted her brows and spoke coldly. Her beautiful eyes emitted a cold intent. From her posture, it seemed like she was about to make a move. Bing Hongye, the Yuan clan wants this kid. Yuan Tai responded coldly. Facing Bing Hongye's threat, he did not put it in his eyes at all. Nye Tian smiled bitterly. These two seemed to treat him like an object and were fighting over him. Unfortunately, he, Nye Tian, did not want to be a pawn to be manipulated. He did not want to go to the Bing clan or the Yuan clan. Yuan Tai, don't force me, Bing Hongye said coldly. She took a step forward, and icicles appeared around her, as if the space was about to be frozen. Nye Tian felt a chill run down his spine. His eyes narrowed and his expression changed. Chapter 3201. You're arrogant. Nye Tian looked at Bing Hongye in surprise. Bing Hongye looked very young, probably around 1,000 years old, but she had the strength of a rank 5 pseudo-sacred. Her martial Dao talent was really strong. The Tianqing region was indeed a border region. The strength of the cultivators was really strong. At this moment, Nye Tian already knew that in the myriad realms, the more peripheral the realms were, the stronger the cultivators were. Therefore, peak forces like the Infinite Territory Guild, Juying Shrine, and 10 Directions Rakshasa Temple all appeared in the border regions. However, Bing Hongye's martial arts talent amazed Nye Tian quite a bit. What a terrifying aura! The surrounding people exclaimed in shock when they felt the chill in the air. As Bing Hongye released her aura, the space stagnation flood was filled with a terrifying chill, as though the space was about to be frozen. Everyone immediately felt the bone-piercing chill. Bing Hongye, if you want to fight, I, Yuan Tai, will gladly accompany you. At this moment, Yuan Tai snickered. The corner of his lips curled into a playful smile as he coldly said, Others might be afraid of you, but I, Yuan Tai, am not. Boom, boom, boom. After saying that, he took a step forward, and the blue stone slabs under his feet cracked. His aura was released like a wild dragon, and the space was immediately filled with a strong and vigorous qi. At this moment, everyone felt a strong pressure, as though a mountain had appeared above their heads. Nye Tian was stunned, and he looked at Yuan Tai with a serious expression. Yuan Tai's strength was stronger than Bing Hongye's, and he had reached the rank 6 pseudo-sacred. However, Yuan Tai was obviously much older than Bing Hongye, and he should be about a few thousand years old. But even so, a 6th-stage pseudo-sage at such a young age could be said to be extremely talented. Bang! At this moment, Bing Hongye's beautiful eyes trembled. She took another step forward, and the cold aura around her intensified. In an instant, the two auras collided, and the void rumbled. In the next moment, Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai retreated at the same time, and their figures stabilized at the same time. Although Bing Hongye's strength was a level lower than Yuan Tai's, she didn't lose to him in terms of aura. Bing Hongye, as expected of the number 1 genius of the Bing family. To think that you would dare to fight against my aura. Seems like I've underestimated you. After Yuan Tai steadied himself, a cold smile appeared on his face. Killing intent flickered in his eyes as he looked at Bing Hongye. Yuan Tai, I'm warning you one last time, get out of my way. Bing Hongye's beautiful eyes quivered as she let out a delicate roar. Her entire body emanated a frosty aura, causing her to look like a gigantic ice mountain. Is your warning useful? Yuan Tai sneered and pointed at Nye Tian. This brat must come with this young master today. Bing Hongye's beautiful eyes sank, and her beautiful face stiffened and became unsightly. When everyone saw this, they couldn't help but have a strange look in their eyes. Many people looked at Nye Tian. It turned out that Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai had appeared here at the same time because of Nye Tian. The crowd couldn't help but feel puzzled. Who exactly was this ordinary-looking silver-haired brat to be able to alarm two great heavenly executioner families at the same time? The two of you, have you asked for my opinion before fighting here? At this moment, the corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched slightly. He took a step forward and swept his gaze across Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai. Ever since Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai appeared, they had been fighting, completely ignoring Nie Tian's existence. It seemed like in their eyes, Nie Tian was an object that didn't need to be taken into consideration. However, at this moment, Nie Tian suddenly stood out, causing their faces to involuntarily change. The battle between Ice Hongye and Yuan Tai just now had made Nie Tian feel that something was wrong. Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai seemed to have a certain level of resistance against the suppression of the Heavenly Executioner formation. Nie Tian was a pseudo-sacred realm cultivator, and under the suppression of the Heavenly Executioner formation, his cultivation was only in the Heavenly Emperor realm. However, the strength that Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai had displayed previously far surpassed ordinary Heavenly Emperors. Do you have the right to object? Yuan Tai laughed coldly, looking at Nie Tian with a cold and disdainful gaze, as though he was above everyone else. It was as though in his eyes, Nie Tian was just an ant, waiting for his orders. You're very arrogant. Nie Tian looked at Yuan Tai and laughed, before shaking his head. Lad, the reason why you're still alive is because you're still useful. Otherwise, you'd be a corpse by now. Yuan Tai laughed coldly and said disdainfully, You're an idiot. Just as he finished speaking, before Nie Tian could say anything, Jean de Bao spoke up with a sneer. What did you say? Yuan Tai was stunned for a moment. He then looked at Jean de Bao with a pair of murderous eyes. He couldn't believe that someone actually dared to call him an idiot in the Heavenly Executioner City. I said you're an idiot. Jean de Bao laughed again, and said in a loud voice. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's eyes widened in shock. The atmosphere became extremely oppressive. You're courting death. Yuan Tai's eyes widened and he roared. He immediately attacked, slamming his palm forward. The space trembled slightly as a shadow of a palm appeared, emitting a terrifying force as it flew towards Jean de Bao. The crowd's eyes widened and immediately focused their attention on Jean de Bao. Bang! However, at that moment, a shadow of a sword appeared and swept across, shattering the shadow of the palm. Huh! This unexpected scene caused Yuan Tai to exclaim in shock. He then looked at Nie Tian. Obviously, he didn't expect Nie Tian to be able to unleash such a terrifying force under the Heavenly Punishing formation. Bastard, you've angered me. The next moment, Yuan Tai's eyes turned cold as he let out a roar. His entire body's strength was unleashed, striking the space violently. This time, he was truly enraged. Nie Tian's eyes focused and he took a step forward fearlessly. Ever since Yuan Tai had appeared, he had been extremely annoyed by his attitude. He had wanted to attack for a long time. Yuan Tai, you're so hot-tempered. At that moment, a voice suddenly rang out. Then, a figure in a green robe descended from the sky and stood between Nie Tian and Yuan Tai. Nie Tian's eyes focused as he looked at the newcomer. The newcomer was a young martial artist dressed in green. His facial features were handsome and he had a heroic spirit. His eyes were filled with an extremely resolute light. Lu Qingxian. The moment the cultivator in green landed, Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai exclaimed at the same time when they saw the former's appearance. The first young master of the Lu clan. At the same time, the surrounding crowd exclaimed in shock. Who would have thought that at that moment, another direct descendant of the Heavenly Punishing clan would appear? Furthermore, Lu Qingxuan's status in the Lu clan was extremely high. He was the successor of the clan leader. Chapter 3202. Have a good time. Nie Tian looked at Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai's reaction, and then at the crowd's reaction. Of course, he could tell that this young martial artist named Lu Qingxian was also not a simple character. And it was obvious that Lu Qingxian was also here for Nie Tian. What was wrong with these Tianxing family people? Why did they appear at the same time and look for Nie Tian? Lu Qingxian, what are you doing here? Yuan Tai asked in a low voice as he stared at Lu Qingxian. Lu Qingshuan's Lu family was also one of the Tianqing families. Lu Qingshuan's sudden arrival made Yuan Tai puzzled. He began to wonder who Nie Tian was. If Bing Hongye's appearance was an accident, it would make sense. But it was strange that Lu Qingxian was here as well. Bing Hongye looked at Lu Qingxian, her pretty face darkening. She obviously had the same doubts as Yuan Tai. She was curious why Yuan Tai would look for Nie Tian. Now that Lu Qingxian was here, it made her even more curious. She even felt that the people of the Feng family would appear later. What was Nie Tian's identity? How could he have alarmed 3 Tianqing families at the same time? Bing Hongye was looking for Nie Tian under the order of the Bing family's elder. Speaking of which, this was the first time Bing Hongye had seen the Bing family's elder. Previously, she only knew that there was an elder in the Bing family. But she had never seen the elder before. There was even a period of time when she thought that the elder might have fallen. Until a few hours ago, the elder suddenly appeared and showed her an image, asking her to find the person in it. And the person in the image was Nie Tian. Bing Hongye did not know who Nie Tian was, nor did she know why the elder was looking for Nie Tian. She only knew that she had to bring Nie Tian back to the Bing family at all costs. Yuan Tai, Tianqing City doesn't belong to your Yuan clan. Why can you come but I can't? Lu Qingxian smiled faintly and his tone was filled with contempt. Yuan Tai's face darkened and he was speechless. Lu Qingxian smiled faintly and then looked at Nie Tian. He bowed slightly and appeared very respectful. Mr. Nie Tian, I am Lu Qingxian of the Tianqing family. I would like to invite Mr. Nie Tian to the Lu residence as a guest. I wonder if Mr. Nie Tian would do me the honor? Nie Tian could not help but stare at Lu Qingshuan's words. Lu Qingxian knew his name. Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai were shocked too, and their faces turned pale. Lu Qingxian really came for Nie Tian, and he even knew Nie Tian's name. The 3 great Tianqing families, the Bing family, the Lu family, and the Yuan family had all come looking for Nie Tian at the same time. When the crowd saw the scene in front of them, their eyes trembled and they were completely stunned. The dignified young master of the Lu family was actually so respectful in front of a young martial artist. This was really strange. Who was this silver-haired martial artist in front of them? How could he have alarmed the 3 great families? Nie Tian looked at Lu Qingxian, and the corner of his mouth twitched. It was a very strange smile. Bing Hongye, Yuan Tai, and Lu Qingxian appeared almost at the same time, and they all came to look for Nie Tian. And the way they invited people was not the same. Bing Hongye was cold, Yuan Tai was overbearing, and Lu Qingxian was tactful. Although Lu Qingshuan's attitude seemed to be the most comfortable, Nie Tian did not like it. He could see that Lu Qingxian was only respectful on the surface, but in his eyes there was a cold intent. What puzzled Nie Tian the most was that Lu Qingxian actually knew his name. Boss, there are a lot of experts around. At this moment, Jean de Bao suddenly transmitted his voice to Nie Tian and told him. Nie Tian frowned and his face could not help but turn ugly. These experts are divided into 3 groups. They must have been brought here by these 3 guys. Jean de Bao added. Nie Tian's face instantly became even more gloomy and he smiled bitterly in his heart. It seems like I have to choose one of these 3. Bing Hongye, Yuan Tai, and Lu Qingxian did not come alone, but had brought a large number of experts with them to hide in the surroundings. It was obvious that they had the greatest determination to take Nie Tian away. It was absolutely impossible for Nie Tian to escape unscathed. He had to choose one of the 3 clans. At this moment, he was very curious why these people from the Tianqing family would suddenly look for him. There must be an invisible hand behind all these things, manipulating everything. Mr. Nie Tian, let's go. At this moment, Lu Qingxian spoke again, and his attitude was even more respectful. You can't go. As soon as he finished his words, Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai exclaimed at the same time, and took a step forward to block their path. Lu Qingshuan's face sank upon seeing this. Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai's determination was stronger than he had expected. Don't be nervous, I haven't decided who I'm going with. Nie Tian let out a faint smile, and his eyes swept across Bing Hongye and the other two with a strange smile. Who are you going with? The eyes of Bing Hongye and the other two flickered, and they looked at Nie Tian with fiery eyes. I can see that you three are in high spirits, so why don't you have some fun? Nie Tian let out a faint smile, and his lips curled into a strange arc. Have fun? The three were startled, and they looked at Nie Tian and asked, How do you want to play? Are you three confident in your own strength? Nie Tian's eyes flickered, and he asked all of a sudden. Bing Hongye and the other two were stunned, and they didn't know what Nie Tian was going to do, but they still nodded. At this time, who would be willing to show weakness? Since that's the case, it's easy. Nie Tian smiled. Then, he condensed the sword qi on his fingertip into a blade and drew a circle several meters wide on the ground. Then, he stepped into the circle and said, Since the three of you are very confident in your own strength, I will stand in this circle. The three of you can attack me, and each of you will have 3 moves. If anyone can force me out of the encirclement within 3 moves, I'll leave with that person. After saying that, Nie Tian's lips curled into a faint smile, and his eyes were filled with extreme confidence. Really? As soon as his voice fell, Bing Hongye and the other two opened their mouths in unison, and their eyes were filled with fiery passion. Of course. Nie Tian laughed and said indifferently. The crowd looked at Nie Tian with trembling eyes, and they couldn't help but discuss. This kid is too arrogant, he dares to play like this? Does he think the disciples of the Tianxing clan are trash? This silver-haired kid is definitely a madman. With his strength, it's already a miracle that he didn't get beaten to death, and he still dares to draw circles? He's courting death. Sigh, let's just wait and watch the show. In any case, I feel that this kid won't be able to resist any one of those 3. The crowd shook their heads as they discussed, obviously treating Nie Tian as an idiot. Nie Tian didn't care about anything else, and his gaze swept across Bing Hongye and the other two. He smiled and asked, Who wants to go first? Chapter 3203. Disguising as a pig to eat a tiger. Bing Hongye, Yuan Tai, and Lu Qingxian took a step forward at the same time, and the slate under their feet directly collapsed. The 3 of them obviously regarded Nie Tian as a weak chicken and wanted to be the first to attack. As long as they could force Nie Tian out of the circle, they could take him away. Then the first person to attack would obviously have the upper hand. The 3 of them had absolute confidence that they could force Nie Tian out of the circle. Therefore, as long as they could compete for the right to attack first, they would win. The 3 of you are so enthusiastic, it makes me feel very embarrassed. Of course, Nie Tian knew what the 3 of them were thinking. He smiled faintly and said with a playful look, Why don't you let me decide the order of attack? Bing Hongye and the other 2 were stunned for a moment, but finally nodded. In their view, whoever Nie Tian chose to attack first would actually be the one to go to. Nie Tian looked at Bing Hongye and the other 2 and finally stopped at Lu Qingxian. He smiled faintly and said, First Master Lu, it seems that you are the most pleasing to the eye. Then you should go first. Lu Qingshuan's eyes trembled and he quickly bowed and said, Thank you, Mr. Nie Tian. But although he was respectful on the surface, his eyes flashed a touch of coldness. He felt that he had deceived Nie Tian and won Nie Tian's trust. Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai's faces froze at the same time, and they looked as ugly as could be. But they had just agreed, and it was not good to turn hostile on the spot. They could only watch and pray that Nie Tian could block Lu Qingshuan's 3 moves. Then, Lu Qingshuan's provocative eyes swept over Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai, and finally fell on Nie Tian. He smiled and said, Mr. Nie Tian, I have offended you. You're welcome. Nie Tian laughed and looked indifferent. Boom. The next moment, Lu Qingxian attacked directly with his palm. The palm force condensed into a palm shadow in the air and burst out with terrible power. Like a stormy sea, it blasted toward Nietian. So strong. Seeing this, everyone's eyes narrowed and their expressions changed. No one had expected that Lu Qingxuan's first palm would be so strong. He simply wanted to hurt Nietian. What a good young master, Lu, you are indeed ruthless. The corner of Nietian's mouth twitched as he muttered inwardly, "Are you trying to kill me with that palm strike?" His first choice of Lu Qingxian was to expose the latter's mask. If Lu Qingxian was really respectful, he would not have been so ruthless at this moment. Boom! At this moment, Nietian's body trembled slightly, and a scarlet halo surged around his body. It was the extreme fire flaming heavenly armor. At this moment, his 9 extremes war god art had already been cultivated to the extreme fire heaven realm, and its defensive capabilities were extremely terrifying. In the next moment, a violent palm fell and bombarded Nietian's body, but it directly collapsed. Nietian stood in the same place, and his figure did not move. Huh! Everyone's eyes trembled and they exclaimed in unison. After coming to their senses, many people hurriedly rubbed their eyes, thinking that they had seen wrong. Lu Qingxian was a pseudo-saint at the 6th stage. It was incredible that such a terrible palm hit Nietian head-on, but the latter did not have any reaction. How is this possible? Lu Qingxian was stunned and exclaimed. He could not believe the scene in front of him. Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai were also stunned, and their eyes surged with unconcealable surprise. Nietian's strength was far beyond their expectations. Strictly speaking, Nietian and the others at this moment only had the strength of the Heaven Emperor realm. But Nietian's martial body was obviously stronger. With a strong martial body and the extreme fire flaming heavenly armor, Lu Qingxuan's palm did not have the slightest effect on him. Master Lu, the strength of your palm is a little weak. At this time, Nietian smiled faintly and looked at Lu Qingxian. The meaning in his words was very obvious. Lu Qingxuan's eyes trembled. He was angry, but it was not good to lose his temper. He could only say, "Mr. Nietian's strength, I admire it. But it doesn't matter, I still have 2 more chances." How could he not see that Nietian was playing with him? Just now, Nietian had been pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Master Lu, you have to seize the opportunity. Nietian's mouth twitched and he raised his eyebrows and said, "Of course." Lu Qingxian smiled slightly, and then the momentum of his whole body surged, and he struck out with his palm. Boom! The void suddenly trembled, and a palm shadow suddenly appeared. The momentum was several times stronger than before, as if to destroy everything. Bang! But the next moment, the palm shadow fell on Nietian's body and collapsed again. Nietian still didn't move in the slightest. This time, everyone's expression stagnated, and they all gasped. The shock in their hearts was written on their faces. If the previous palm was because Lu Qingxian did not go all out, then the current palm could show the true strength of Nietian. Impossible! Lu Qingxian screamed, sweat oozing from his forehead, and his face was very ugly. He did not expect that Nietian's martial body would be so strong. Idiot! Jean de Bao looked at Lu Qingxian, the corner of his mouth twitched, and said with a smile, "What did you say?" Lu Qingxian suddenly turned around, his eyes flashing fiercely as he stared at Jean de Bao. "I'm just telling the truth." Jean de Bao sneered and said, "Some people are too fragile and can't accept the truth. What can I do?" "You!" Lu Qingxuan's face darkened, and he was so angry that he could not speak. "Master Lu, there is still the 3rd chapter, continue." At this time, Nietian said with a faint smile. Lu Qingxuan's eyes darkened, and his face recovered a little. The most important thing at the moment was still Nietian. "The last chapter, don't let me down." Nietian looked at Lu Qingxian and said with a faint smile. Lu Qingxuan's face was tense and ugly to the extreme. It turned out that the person who was fooled was not Nie Tian, but him. Nie Tian, since this is the case, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Lu Qingxian growled in his heart, and his whole body was wild, releasing a terrifying force. Roar! The next moment, he blasted out a punch, and a black giant beast shadow appeared in the void, like a tiger coming down the mountain. With a roar, it rushed toward Nie Tian. Nie Tian saw this, but he was not in a hurry, and the corners of his mouth pulled into a faint smile. Bang! The next moment, the giant beast fell and hit Nie Tian's body, but after a muffled sound, it directly collapsed. At the same time, Nie Tian's figure swayed, but it only swayed a little, and then he stood firmly. Lu Qingxuan's palm strike only made Nie Tian's figure shake a little. Everyone's eyes trembled, and after a long time, there was a sound of saliva being swallowed. Nie Tian was so terrifying that he could easily block Lu Qingxuan's 3 moves. Lu Qingxian looked at Nie Tian as if he was looking at a monster. His face was as ugly as if he had eaten *T, and his mouth was wide open, but he could not say a word for a long time. First young Master Lu, I'm sorry you lost. Nie Tian smiled faintly and looked at Lu Qingxian. Lu Qingxuan's body trembled, and he took a few steps back, almost unable to stand. Chapter 3204. To be triggered at any moment, it turns out that the eldest son of the Lu family is a good-for-nothing. At this time, Yuan Tai stood up and laughed wildly, not caring about Lu Qingxuan's feelings. Lu Qingxuan's expression was dull. He had been beaten black and blue. Alright, since you said that young Master Lu is trash, then I'll let you, who isn't trash, make your move. Let's see if you can force me out of the circle. Nie Tian smiled faintly and looked at Yuan Tai with a playful gaze. Boy, you are too arrogant. Yuan Tai's face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping blood. How could he not hear the sarcasm in Nie Tian's words? But he, Yuan Tai, would not be fooled like Lu Qingxian. He would fight with all his strength, even if it meant killing Nie Tian. If you are not a good-for-nothing, then make your move. Nie Tian laughed. His eyes were even more contemptuous. You are courting death. Yuan Tai smiled coldly and growled. His whole body's aura burst out wildly, like a surging mountain. It was very terrifying. Boom! The next moment, Yuan Tai's palm shot out. The terrifying palm force actually condensed into a shadow of a mountain in the space, crazily pressing down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, the corner of his mouth twitched. A layer of starlight appeared around his body, the star soul shield was opened. Compared to Lu Qingxian, Yuan Tai's aura was stronger, and after the accumulation of power, the outbreak was very terrifying. Bang! Immediately, the shadow of the mountain fell, but directly collapsed. Nie Tian was like a rock, not moving at all. Seeing this scene, Yuan Tai's face darkened. It was very ugly. Of course, he could see that Nie Tian had used another defensive method. The defensive power was stronger than the previous blazing heavenly armor. Everyone's eyes trembled again, the shock in their hearts, it was indescribable. Who would have thought that when Nie Tian faced Lu Qingxian just now, he had hidden his strength? Yuan Tai, are you sure you are not a good-for-nothing? If I stand here without moving, you won't be able to do anything to me. Nie Tian looked at Yuan Tai and smiled coldly. You! Yuan Tai's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he clenched his fists tightly. His aura skyrocketed once again. Then, he released a second palm strike. An even more massive mountain void image appeared, descending with a rumbling noise. However, it collapsed again. Nie Tian remained motionless. Damn it! Yuan Tai's eyes flickered as he howled like a wild beast. His aura erupted forth as waves of terrifying energy blasted through the air, causing terrifying explosions. At this moment, his body was surrounded by a strong bloody aura. Self-igniting blood qi. Seeing this scene, the crowd's expression changed and they exclaimed in shock. Who would have thought that in the 3rd chapter, Yuan Tai would actually ignite his own blood qi? Is this idiot crazy? Seeing this, Jean de Bao's eyes narrowed, and he could not help but feel nervous. He had yet to truly understand Nie Tian's strength, so he was a little worried. Desolate Ghost, on the other hand, had a calm expression on his face, as if he was not worried for Nie Tian. Nie Tian's terror was not something these people could imagine. Even if Yuan Tai were to ignite his own blood qi, he would not be a threat to Nie Tian. Die! At this moment, Yuan Tai roared and slammed out with his palm. The air trembled as a blood-colored mountain appeared, slamming down on Nie Tian. The corner of Nie Tian's lips twitched as a layer of astral light appeared around him, transforming into a giant made of astral light. The armor of the astral soul was activated. With the armor of the astral soul and the shield of the astral soul, Nie Tian's defense increased once again. Within the Heaven Punisher array, the astral energy was suppressed to a certain extent. However, it was still extremely powerful. Under normal circumstances, Yuan Tai, who had self-ignited his blood qi, might be able to break through the armor of the astral soul and the shield of the astral soul. However, under the Heaven Punisher array, it was impossible for him to break through. Bang! The next moment, the blood-colored mountain fell and a muffled sound was heard in the air. Then, the mountain collapsed and turned into an endless force that raged in the space. Nie Tian's figure, however, was like a giant tree in the wind, not moving at all. The scene in front of them made everyone's eyes widen and their hearts filled with horror. It was hard to imagine that Nie Tian had such a terrifying defense. Puff. At this moment, Yuan Tai looked at Nie Tian and was about to say something, but his body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The self-igniting of his blood qi, coupled with the attack of qi and blood on his heart, made it difficult for him to bear, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Yuan Tai, it seems that you don't know yourself well enough. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, You are really a piece of trash and even more useless than Lu Qingxian. Every word was like a needle, pricking Yuan Tai's heart, almost driving him crazy. After a long time, the crowd calmed down and then turned their eyes to Bing Hongye. Since Lu Qingxian and Yuan Tai had both failed, only Bing Hongye could make a move. Bing Hongye stood still and looked at Nie Tian with trembling eyes, as if she wanted to say something. The failure of Lu Qingxian and Yuan Tai made her fully understand the strength of Nie Tian. She knew that with her strength, it was impossible to force Nie Tian out of the circle. Instead of losing face, it was better to admit defeat. Bing Hongye's beautiful eyes trembled, and she took a step forward and finally opened her mouth. However, as soon as she spoke, she was interrupted by Nie Tian. Miss Hongye, let's go. Nie Tian looked at Bing Hongye and smiled faintly, then directly stepped out of the circle. Bing Hongye's beautiful eyes froze. She could not believe her eyes and shouted in surprise. The eyes of the crowd also trembled and became extremely strange. Nie Tian had walked out of the circle. What was going on? Lu Qingxian and Yuan Tai were stunned by the scene in front of them, and their faces froze. Miss Hongye, let's go. At this time, Nie Tian spoke again with a faint smile. Yes. Bing Hongye responded at this time, and her delicate face could not hide her joy. It turned out that Nie Tian had already made up his mind to go with Bing Hongye. The reason why he accompanied Lu Qingxian and Yuan Tai was that he wanted to prove his strength to those who were lurking around. In fact, he did not like Bing Hongye's attitude, but he hated Lu Qingxian and Yuan Tai even more. At this time, Nie Tian also wanted to know who was looking for him. Want to leave? No way. But at this time, Lu Qingxuan's eyes darkened and he growled. Brat, do you think you can leave today? At the same time, Yuan Tai roared like a thunderclap. Boom! Boom! As soon as the two of them finished speaking, two terrifying auras shot up into the sky from the surrounding void. In midair, behind Lu Qingxian and Yuan Tai, a group of martial artists in black appeared, each with surging aura and strong killing intent. Lu Qingxian and Yuan Tai were going to use tough means. You've gone too far. Bing Hongye's pretty face turned cold when she saw this. She growled coldly, and then her aura went wild. The next moment, behind her, a powerful aura appeared, and a group of martial artists in black appeared. The hidden experts of the Bing family, the Lu family, the Yuan family, and the Tian Xing family appeared at the same time. The situation instantly became tense, and a war was about to break out. Everyone was stunned and petrified. Chapter 3205. In Heaven Punishment City, the three great Tianqing family's warriors appeared at almost the same time and confronted each other. Bang bang bang! Powerful auras collided in the air, creating earth-shattering noises. The warriors of the three families did not back down. Instead, they all stepped forward. QL-11 The atmosphere was gloomy and stifling. Everyone's eyes trembled, not daring to breathe. At this time, everyone could feel the tension of an arrow on a bowstring. As long as the three parties made a move, it would lead to the most direct and tragic battle. The Tianqing family was the core force of the Myriad Domains Guild. Everyone in Heaven Punishment City knew that there were 5 great Tianqing families in the Myriad Domains Guild. These 5 great Tianqing families had been in constant friction in recent years. They competed with each other and occasionally had some small conflict. However, this was the first time such a situation had occurred. The warriors that appeared were the elites of the Bing family, Lu family, and Yuan family that had accumulated over the years. If a war were to break out, all 3 sides would suffer losses, and the losses would definitely be disastrous. Such an outcome would not only be a blow to the 3 families, but also to the Myriad Domains Guild. The reason why the Myriad Domains Guild could be so powerful and famous was because of the existence of the Tianqing family. The serious consequences of a war between the 3 great Tianqing families could be imagined. What puzzled everyone the most was that the reason for the conflict between the 3 families was a young warrior who had just stepped into Heaven Punishment City. At this moment, everyone was most curious about the identity of Nie Tian to be able to cause a conflict between the 3 families. Nie Tian looked at the large group of cultivators from the 3 factions in the air and could not help but frown. He did not expect things to turn out this way. This made him even more puzzled. Why were the 3 families looking for him? Damn! Jean de Bao, who was standing beside Nie Tian, couldn't help but grimace and frown as he watched this scene. At this time, Bing Hongye, Lu Qingxian, and Yuan Tai all had ugly expressions. The 3 of them obviously did not expect things to turn out this way. Lu Qingxian, Yuan Tai, are you crazy? If we alert the Heavenly Executioner, it won't do any good for our 3 clans. Bing Hongye took a step forward and said in a deep voice. Her pretty face was tense, and it was obvious that she was being very careful. In the current situation, a single mistake would lead to a great tragedy. Actually, at this moment, Bing Hongye was very happy to see the Heavenly Punishment Guards appear. But strangely, the Heavenly Punishment Guard did not appear even after a long time. Bing Hongye, Nie Tian is the person our ancestor wants. Today, our Lu family must take him away at all costs. Lu Qingxian frowned, stepped forward, and said in a cold voice. He was very smart. He did not want to start a war with the Bing family and the Yuan family, so he brought out the Lu family ancestor. However, Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai's eyes narrowed at the same time, and their expressions changed. No wonder Lu Qingxian was so insistent. It turned out that the ancestor of the Lu family wanted to see Nie Tian. Coincidentally, Bing Hongye and Yuan Tai had also appeared at the behest of their old ancestor. Lu Qingxian, this silver-haired kid, is also the person our Yuan family ancestor wants. Today, our Yuan family will not take a step back. Yuan Tai thought for a moment, and his aura surged crazily, like a stormy sea, extremely terrifying. Bing Hongye's beautiful eyes flickered when she saw this scene, and the icy aura around her became even sharper, like a storm, extremely murderous. She did not expect that the Lu family ancestor and the Yuan family ancestor would also want to see Nie Tian. She could not help but wonder what Nie Tian's identity was. He had just entered the heavenly punishment city, and yet he had alarmed the 3 heavenly executioners at the same time. Nie Tian frowned, and his heart was even more puzzled. The heavenly punishment family was already very terrifying, and the 3 great families' old ancestors were definitely the top figures in the myriad territory. Why would these top figures want to see him? Bing Hongye, it seems that you are also here at the behest of the Bing family ancestor. Lu Qingxian looked at Bing Hongye and said in a deep voice, "In that case, let's do it." As soon as he finished his sentence, the atmosphere in the place became heavy. Everyone's nerves tensed up, and their hearts were in their throats. "Let's fight!" At the same time, Yuan Tai's eyes turned cold, and he let out a low roar, and his aura surged violently. Bing Hongye's beautiful eyes quivered, and she took a few steps back. Although she did not say anything, it was a tacit acknowledgement of the start of the battle. This. The crowd's eyes widened and their expressions turned sluggish, unable to utter a single word. Who would have thought that the 3 great families would really start a war? Bang! 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 In the next instant, the martial artists of the 3 great families took a step forward, and the sky shook violently, as if the space was about to explode. Kill! 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 The martial artists of the 3 great families roared at the same time, and their figures moved at the same time. Stop! However, at that instant, a deep voice suddenly appeared in the sky, as if it contained an extremely terrifying force, causing the sky to tremble. Buzz! At this moment, everyone's expression changed. A loud roar rang in their ears, as though their eardrums were about to shatter. Puff, puff, puff! Countless people vomited blood on the spot, and their faces turned as white as a sheet. Nie Tian's eyes glistened, and his expression changed slightly. He did not expect someone to be able to unleash such a terrifying force under the influence of the heavenly punishing formation. Without a doubt, the person's strength had reached the peak 9th order pseudo-sacred realm. Besides, it seemed like his strength was not affected by the suppression of the heavenly punishing formation. But how was that possible? Even the star primary stones were affected by the suppression of the heavenly punishing formation. Besides, according to the Ghost Monarch, the heavenly punishing formation was one of the ancient 9 formations. What kind of person's strength was so terrifying that he was not affected by the suppression of the heavenly punishing formation? Under the suppression of the force, the martial artists of the 3 clans were knocked back simultaneously. Everyone was dumbfounded, and their bodies were drenched in cold sweat. The astonishment in their hearts was written all over their faces. Progenitor! Meanwhile, Bing Hongye's eyes flickered when she heard the voice. Her expression stiffened slightly, and she exclaimed in her heart. The voice belonged to the progenitor of the Bing clan. Bing Hongye did not expect the progenitor of the Bing clan to show up in person. Everyone kept quiet out of fear, and no one dared to make a move. Lu Qingxian and Yuan Tai wore embarrassed expressions, and their hearts were filled with panic. Unbelievable, the heavenly Punisher had shown up in person. Brother Lu, Brother Yuan, since you're here, you should at least say something. Following this, the voice of the progenitor of the Bing clan was heard once again. It was like a clap of thunder, but it was no longer as oppressive as before. It was obvious that the suppression was just to deter the crowd. As soon as the progenitor of the Bing clan finished his sentence, 2 other voices were heard. Brother Bing, Brother Yuan, it's been a while. Brother Bing, Brother Lu, it's been a while. 2 voices were heard almost at the same time, and their auras were no weaker than the progenitor of the Bing clan. Bing Hongye, Lu Qingxian, and Yuan Tai were dumbfounded when they heard the voices. Chapter 3206. The 3 patriarchs had appeared at the same time. Everyone was stunned. Their expressions were sluggish, and they didn't react for a long time. The 5 Tianqing families were the most powerful forces in the Thousand Territories Association. Even the guild master of the Thousand Territories Association was afraid of them. The patriarchs of the 5 families were almost legendary figures. Everyone present only knew that there were great ancestor-level figures in the 5 great families, but no one had actually seen the 5 great-great ancestors. There was even a rumor in Tianqing City that the patriarchs of the 5 families were 5 old monsters who had lived for who knew how long. They might have died without anyone knowing. Because of this, the appearance of the 3 patriarchs at the same time shocked everyone. Their appearance had at least dispelled one rumor: they were still alive. Nie Tian was shocked when he heard the voices in the air. He hadn't thought that there would be so many peerless powerhouses in a small city like Tianqing City. Judging from their auras, the 3 patriarchs were definitely no weaker than the Juying Temple Master. Perhaps only a freak like Eternally Merciless could fight against the 3 patriarchs in the Thousand Territories. Brother Liu, Brother Yuan, you saw what happened just now, right? This young man called Nie Tian has made his choice. Are you still going to persist? At that moment, Ancestor Bing's voice rang out once more. His deep and powerful voice echoed through the air, as if it was coming from all directions. Ha ha ha. Brother Bing, it was just a joke between kids. Don't take it seriously. Patriarch Lu's voice was playful and forceful. This guy was indeed the patriarch of the Lu family. He was even more cunning than Lu Qingxian. He'd called what had happened a joke. Yes, Brother Bing, we all know how important this kid is to us. If what happened just now can decide who he belongs to, then it's too much of a joke, Patriarch Yuan continued, his tone threatening. The conversation between the 3 of them caused everyone to be stunned. Their faces were filled with shock and astonishment. Who would have thought that the 3 patriarchs would be so shameless? It seemed that Nie Tian was really important to them. Then there's nothing to talk about. After a moment of dead silence, Bing family's ancestor's voice rang out again. This time, it was extremely tough and carried a sharp aura. Then let's fight. Before the voice of the Bing family's ancestor faded away, the Yuan family's ancestor roared furiously. The Yuan family's old ancestor was obviously more ferocious, and was about to start a fight. Since you insist, I will accompany you to the end. Then, the old ancestor of the Lu family spoke in a deep and cold voice. Everyone's eyes trembled. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. The 3 ancestral patriarchs were going to show up and fight. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. After thinking for a moment, he took a step forward and was about to say something. But at this moment, he suddenly felt a strange aura, causing his expression to change, and he was shocked on the spot. Boss, what's wrong? Jean de Bao was originally watching with great interest, but he suddenly noticed that Nie Tian's expression was strange, so he couldn't help but frown and ask. Nie Tian, are you all right? Desolate Ghost also felt that something was wrong and asked curiously. This aura, could it be? Nie Tian was stunned for a few seconds before he reacted. He opened his mouth in a daze, but he couldn't finish his sentence. At this moment, he suddenly sensed a powerful aura approaching him. This aura was unfamiliar, but it made him feel an indescribable excitement. This feeling was like a soul resonance, but it was an unfamiliar soul resonance. Nie Tian was very sure that he had never encountered this aura before. The aura of the astral soul imprint, astral soul resonance. In the next moment, he finally spoke, his eyes trembling as he spoke in a daze. Astral soul resonance? Jean de Bao stared at Nie Tian with a strange look on his face. He had no idea what Nie Tian was talking about. HM? Could it be that Brother Tang is here? Desolate Ghost immediately reacted and frowned. Of course, he knew what the aura of the astral soul imprint was. It was a type of soul resonance between the astral lord and the astral lord. For now, it was called astral soul resonance. However, astral soul resonance only happened between the astral lord and the astral lord. There was no astral soul resonance between two astral lords. Hence, Nye Tian could feel the aura of the astral soul imprint, but Desolate Ghost could not. Desolate Ghost knew that aside from him, there was another astral lord. That was Tang 13. But didn't Tang 13 go to the vanishing shadow domain with Tang Yuyu? Why is she here? It's not Tang 13. Nye Tian frowned and shook his head solemnly. He was very familiar with Tang 13's aura. But the aura that was rushing over now was very unfamiliar, and it was much stronger than Tang 13's. How is this possible? Desolate Ghost was stunned and his expression froze. Could it be that aside from him and Tang 13, there were other astral lords? QL11 Nye Tian was also stunned. He had only helped Desolate Ghost and Tang 13 merge with the forbidden astral soul. How could there be other astral lords? In the next moment, Nye Tian's eyes flickered as he came to a realization and exclaimed inwardly, I see. This astral lord that was rushing over was not created by him, but by the previous astral lord. When he understood this, Nye Tian's expression darkened, and he stood rooted to the ground. A astral lord created by the previous astral lord. How terrifying must this person be? Xia Ho. At that moment, the three patriarchs in the void felt a strong and familiar aura at the same time. Their expressions changed, and they exclaimed in their hearts. They did not expect another patriarch to be here. This patriarch called Xia Ho was like them, a heavenly executioner. However, Xia Ho's strength was recognized as the strongest. More importantly, the reason why the three patriarchs were fighting over Nye Tian was because of Xia Ho. The three did not expect Xia Ho to show up personally. Brother Bing, Brother Lu, Brother Yuan, if you guys fight today, I will be in deep trouble. At that moment, a voice resounded in the void. It was powerful and vast, like thunder falling from the sky. When everyone heard this voice, their eyes widened in shock. This aura was even stronger than the three patriarchs. At that moment, Nye Tian's pupils constricted. His face froze and he was shocked. When the voice resounded in the void, he felt the resonance of the astral soul in his body become even stronger. Without a doubt, this expert who suddenly appeared was a astral lord. Nye Tian did not expect to meet a astral lord in Heaven Executioner City. Chapter 3207. One must accept defeat. The sudden arrival of a terrifying expert caused the atmosphere to become strange once again. Everyone kept quiet out of fear, not even daring to breathe too loudly. Even the ancestors of the Bing clan, Lu clan, and Yuan clan were silent. It was obvious that they were afraid of the newcomer. Brother Xiaoho, I did not expect you to come personally. After a long time, the Yuan family patriarch's voice rang out. His aura was much weaker than before. Brother Yuan, if I had not arrived, something big would have happened today. Xiaoho smiled faintly, his voice reverberating in the air. The Myriad Domain Association only has 5 heaven executioners. If the 3 of you start a fight, our association leader will make trouble for me. Brother Xiaoho came at the right time. How should we deal with this matter? Brother Xiaoho, please decide, the Yuan family patriarch said seriously. I do not dare to say I will decide. I am just giving you an idea, Xiaoho said with a smile. Brother Xiaoho, please speak, the 3 patriarchs said at the same time, wanting to see what Xiaoho would say. At this moment, Nye Tian reacted. However, he frowned, his expression extremely strange. The name Xiaoho immediately made him think of the person Hua Eru wanted him to find, Xiaoho Yao. Xiao Chen was not sure if this star venerate who just appeared was the Xiaoho Yao that Hua Eru mentioned. However, he was certain that all this had something to do with this star venerate. Based on the reactions of the 3 patriarchs, they were very afraid of Xiaoho, even a little fearful. This showed that Xiaoho's strength was extraordinary. At this moment, the place was deathly silent. Everyone was waiting for Xiaoho to speak. After a long time, Xiaoho's voice finally rang out. His tone was deep and contained a hint of threat. You must accept defeat. Right after Xiahou spoke, the entire place fell silent. The atmosphere was stifling. Xiahou's meaning was clear. The bet between Nie Tian, Bing Hongye, and the other two was still in effect. Nie Tian wanted to leave with the Bing family patriarch. Many thanks, Brother Xiahou. After a while, the Bing family patriarch laughed loudly. The Lu family ancestor and the Yuan family ancestor seemed to have disappeared. They did not move for a long time. Brother Lu, Brother Yuan, do you have anything to say about my decision? Xiahou's voice rang out again, and there was a hint of pressure in his calm voice. No. Lu family ancestor and Yuan family ancestor remained silent for a while before finally answering. However, they were obviously not satisfied. But even if he was unwilling, what could he do? Xiahou was the strongest among the 5 heaven executioners. Even if the Lu and Yuan family patriarchs teamed up, they might not be able to defeat him. Farewell. Then, the Yuan clan ancestor's voice rang out and he left. Farewell. The patriarch of the Lu family also left. Nie Tian had already decided to leave with forefather Bing, so there was no need for them to stay. As the 2 great masters left, the warriors of the Lu family and the Yuan family also left. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he looked into the void. Although he could clearly sense the existence of that celestial lord, he could not determine its exact location. Brother Xiahou, I will take my leave as well. At that moment, the patriarch of the Bing clan said in a deep voice, Red Leaf, take little friend Nie Tian away. Yes. Bing Hongye nodded quickly. Then, he looked at Nie Tian and prepared to take him away. Wait a minute. But at this moment, Xiahou's voice rang out suddenly, making everyone freeze. Nie Tian, leave the 2 people beside you behind, Xiahou said again. This time, he was talking to Nie Tian. Nie Tian could not see Xiahou, but he had a strange feeling. It was as if there was a pair of invisible eyes staring at him in the dark. He had not expected Xiahou to leave the desolate ghost and Jean de Bao behind. Forefather Bing was also stunned. He was very confused. He did not know why someone like Xiahou wanted these 2 brats. Senior, you. Nie Tian was stunned. His eyes narrowed and he stepped forward to speak. However, Xiahou interrupted him. Don't worry. I, Xiahou Yao, am not shameless enough to harm 2 juniors, Xiahou said seriously. Xiahou Yao. When Nie Tian heard this name, he could not help but narrow his eyes, and his expression changed. This star venerate was really Xiahou Yao. It was really the person that Hua Yiru wanted Nie Tian to find. It turned out that Hua Yiru actually wanted Nie Tian to find a star venerate. Clearly, Hua Yiru knew Xiahou Yao's identity. Otherwise, he would not have trusted him so much. At this moment, Nie Tian was certain that Xiahou Yao had been paying attention to them the moment they entered the Tianqing realm. Xiao Chen even felt that Xiahou Yao might have known of his existence long ago. He just had not shown himself. Clearly, Xiahou Yao was trying to reassure Nie Tian by revealing his identity. The 2 of you, let's go, Xiahou Yao said again at this moment. Then, an image appeared in the air. The desolate ghost and Jean de Bao looked at Nie Tian, waiting for him to speak. All right. Nie Tian thought for a while and nodded indifferently. Xiahou Yao knew far more than Nie Tian expected. Clearly, he had a purpose in getting the desolate ghost and Jean de Bao to go with him. Xiahou Yao was a star venerate. Furthermore, he was someone recommended by Hua Yiru, so he was trustworthy. The desolate ghost and Jean de Bao nodded. Then, they said their goodbyes to Nie Tian. Their figures flashed, flying towards the figure in the air. The 3 figures quickly vanished. Xiahou Yao, what exactly are you planning? Nie Tian thought to himself as he looked at the sky. His eyes narrowed slightly. Xiao Chen was very curious about Xiahou Yao's forbidden star soul. Also, why did Xiahou Yao arrange everything earlier? After a while, Nie Tian's lips twitched as he thought to himself, don't think too much first. Everything will be clear when we meet the Bing clan's ancestor later. The storm ended just like that. After that, Nye Tian did not linger. He followed Bing Hongye to the ice residence. Along the way, Bing Hongye did not say a word. However, she could not help turning her head to look at Nye Tian many times, her eyes filled with doubt. Lord Nye Tian, do you know Senior Xiao? Bing Hongye finally could not help asking after entering the ice residence. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she looked at Nye Tian. She did not know Nye Tian's identity, but since the Bing clan's ancestor addressed Nye Tian as little friend, she was even more cautious, addressing Nye Tian as Lord. I don't know him. Nye Tian smiled and shook his head slightly. Bing Hongye was stunned, but she did not say anything. Instead, she led Nye Tian to the inner courtyard. After a while, the two arrived outside a hidden courtyard. The courtyard was not big, but it was very unique. There was a long, winding path leading to a secluded place. Hongye, you can go back now. Just at this moment, a deep voice came from the courtyard. It was the Bing clan's ancestor. Yes. Hongye will take her leave, Bing Hongye answered and left respectfully. Chapter 3208. The Heaven's Executioner Tian Xing City, the Ice House, inside an elegant courtyard. As soon as Nye Tian walked in, he was greeted by the refreshing fragrance of flowers. He narrowed his eyes and saw a white-haired old man sitting in a pavilion in the courtyard. At this moment, the old man was looking at Nye Tian with a smile on his face. His eyes were calm and his face was kind, but he gave off an oppressive feeling that he wasn't angry. Nye Tian's heart skipped a beat. He felt like this elder was like a lion, emitting the aura of a powerhouse. Though this elder had a head full of white hair, his skin was smooth like a 20-year-old. The only exception was his eyes, which were sunken in and filled with wrinkles. It was as if they had been there for countless years. What surprised Nye Tian the most was that although this elder's aura was hidden, it was still powerful. This elder was not affected by the Heaven's Punisher array at all. How is this possible? Nye Tian's first reaction was disbelief as his eyes trembled. The Heaven's Punisher array was one of the ancient 9 arrays and could even suppress the cosmic stone. What was so strange about this elder? How was he not affected by the Heaven's Punisher array at all? My friend Nye Tian, you're here. At this moment, the white-haired elder spoke. His tone was calm like a grandpa next door. Nye Tian calmed down, smiled faintly, and bowed slightly towards the old man. Greetings, Senior Bing. This elder was obviously Elder Bing of the Bing clan. My friend Nye Tian, you are too kind. Elder Bing chuckled and raised his hand, gesturing for Nye Tian to sit. Nye Tian didn't stand on ceremony. He walked into the gazebo and sat across from Elder Bing. He asked directly, Elder, why did you call me here? Little friend Nye Tian, is this your first time in Heaven Xing City? Bing clan's patriarch laughed and asked a question instead of answering Nye Tian's question. Yes. Nye Tian nodded. Nye Tian, how much do you know about Tian Xing City? Elder Icehouse asked. Not much. Just the basics. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, The Heaven Executioner City is where the headquarters of the Myriad Realms Guild is located. It's said that it's an ancient city that has existed since ancient times. The entire city is enveloped by a grand spell formation, making it impregnable. It seems like Nye Tian knows a lot. The patriarch of the Bing clan laughed as a strange light flashed in his eyes. He said, Nye Tian, my young friend, you must have sensed that the grand spell formation that covers the entire Heaven Xing City has a strong suppressive force on cultivators. Nye Tian nodded and asked, Senior, you don't seem to be affected by the spell formation. Why? He already had this question in his mind and wanted to ask. Now that Elder Bing brought it up, he naturally had to ask. Elder Bing seemed to have guessed that Nye Tian would ask this question. He smiled brightly and said, Because I am the Heaven Executioner. Heaven Executioner? Nye Tian was startled. He didn't know what this meant. Heaven Executioner, the array door. At the same time, Ghost Emperor's voice was heard. He screamed in shock. Nie Tian was taken aback once again, confusion filling his face. He knew what the array door was, but he didn't know what the Heaven Executioner meant. An array usually had an array door and an array eye. The array door was the entrance to the array, and also the channel for the array to absorb energy from the outside world. The array eye was where the array's energy gathered and was also the weakest point of the array. Any formation would require energy to operate. As time passed, the array's energy would weaken. The purpose of the formation gate was to absorb energy and maintain the formation. Nie Tian, you should know what the array door is. Seeing Nie Tian's confused expression, Elder Bing faintly smiled and said, "The Heaven Executioner is the array door of the Heaven Punisher array." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed at Elder Bing's words. This was the first time he heard of someone being the array door. However, there was nothing strange about this. The Ghost Emperor had refined his own body into a large formation. The Heaven Punisher array sure is magical. Using a cultivator as the array door, not only can the array operate, but it can also strengthen the array's defense. Ghost Emperor's voice was heard. Nie Tian frowned, slowly understanding the mysteries of the Heaven Punisher array. The array door was also the weakest point of the array. But using a cultivator as the array door avoided this weakness. Moreover, a cultivator's strength could be increased. This meant that the entire array's strength could also be increased. Nie Tian, now you understand why this old man's strength is not suppressed by the Heaven Punisher array. Elder Bing smiled faintly. Nie Tian nodded, but he remained silent. Elder Bing was a Heaven Executioner, the array door of the Heaven Punisher array. He was part of the array and the array itself. Of course, he wouldn't be suppressed by the array. This way, the entire Heaven Punisher array was almost perfect. All the cultivators that entered the array would be suppressed, but the Heaven Executioner's strength would not be suppressed. In fact, it would even increase. Therefore, the Heaven Executioner was almost invincible in the Heaven Punisher array. Even a powerhouse like Eternally Merciless would be suppressed to the Heavenly Emperor realm after entering the Heaven Punisher city. How could he fight a Heaven Executioner? The more Nie Tian thought about it, the more terrifying the Heaven Punisher array became. With a Heaven Executioner guarding the Heaven Punisher city, it was an impenetrable fortress. After a short while, Nie Tian calmed down and said in a deep voice, "Senior, if you have something to say, just say it." He understood that there must be a reason why Elder Bing told him so much. Young friend Nie Tian, the Heaven Executioners are powerful and have high statuses. However, as a Heaven Executioner, there are many things we can't do. Elder Bing suddenly looked at Nie Tian and sighed. The Heaven Executioners are the array door of the Heaven Punisher array. Therefore, they cannot leave the Heaven Punisher city. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his brows furrowed. A cultivator would be very miserable if he was trapped in a city for his entire life. Especially someone like Elder Bing, who had lived for millions of years. He would probably go crazy if he stayed in a city for too long. Not being able to leave the Heaven Punisher city is actually nothing. Then, Elder Bing continued, as a Heaven Executioner, the most painful thing is having to endure the pain of the Heaven Punisher at all times. The pain of the Heaven Punisher? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his expression changed. He immediately understood something. Elder Bing wanted to see him because he had something to ask of him. And this matter must be related to the pain of the Heaven Punisher.